next part of this too? Okay. All right. Ask the jury to join us, please, Ms. Watkins. Okay, hope you enjoyed your lunch, ladies and gentlemen. We're ready to start back. Ms. Hart?
You comfortable?
Yes.
You put this one on top, or you want it on top?
It's fine, sir. It's mine.
Use your cigarettes, by the way. And that's your water. If you want to drink it anytime, you drink it anytime you want to, okay? You got enough room out there, mate?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. Just for the sake of directions, I know where we're going, but I'd like for you to tell me where I'm going.
Yes, sir. It's been a long time, but I'll do my best.
Okay. So right now we're going to leave and we're going to head towards where?
Fitzgerald.
All
Just
right.
take 319 all the way to Fitzgerald and hang a right, and I believe that's the way. Start going out of town.
Okay.
Actually, if we go straight through.
So go up towards Fitzgerald, which is that one.
Yes, sir. To the right. Say it's been years since I've been to Fitzgerald.
Okay. Now, is it in Fitzgerald or is it?
It's out past it.
Okay, so keep going through Fitzgerald and on the other side?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's the store, the G&G Mart. That's the one right here behind us to the left. That's the one you're talking about.
Yes, sir. It used to be a Swifty Mart or something.
I don't even know. I think they took the payphone down. Was it on the side of the building or on the front?
It was in the front,
Okay.
I believe. Yes, sir. I think it was in the front.
Will you give him just ETA updates as we get a little closer?
Absolutely.
Okay. When we get through the north side of Fitzgerald, like he's saying, just go ahead and text him. You sure you don't want? I mean, if you want that water now, get you some of that water.
Yeah, sure. I'm all right. Thank you, though.
Let me ask this: do you remember if there was any light? Well, there weren't any lights on in the house, or were there when you went into the house?
I don't think so.
You don't remember seeing any?
I don't remember seeing any, no, sir.
Do you know about, from the time you got to the house the first time until you got her out here where you dropped the body, do you know about how long, how many hours it may have been?
At least 6.
But you made the phone call and then you went pretty much almost to the house directly after that.
Yes, sir. When nobody answered, I mean, basically my worst fear.
Right. So you said you kind of drove down that way, kind of checked the area, make sure you parked, and then...
No, sir. I drove straight there.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
So maybe an hour after you put her body in the truck, it takes you to do all that you got to do out here. So about 5 hours before the phone call, and then you're thinking, if the whole incident was 5 or 6 hours, then maybe 4 or 5 hours before the phone call is when everything happened.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. That phone call was when I went and got her and brought her out here.
And just looking back, I know you don't quite remember, but if you were going to dump her keys in her purse, would you have done it before or after dumping the body, you think?
I guess after. I mean, I said that I hadn't even thought about that.
Like getting rid of the body was paramount at that point.
Yes, sir.
Out of the fear.
Yes,
and then the purse and the keys. But I mean, you didn't take anything else from the house, no jewelry or anything
No,
like
sir.
that. And you said you don't remember seeing any jewelry on her.
No, sir.
And once again, I'm just saying this. If there was any type of relationship or friendship before, it's okay.
There wasn't, sir.
Okay. So completely random.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Madison, will you hand me water, please? Thanks. That's for you for later. Do you think, I know you said you were dating, you said Lindsay, right?
Yes, sir.
What do you think were the issues with that relationship? I mean, why do you think that, I mean, was it an amicable breakup, or?
She was still in love with her husband.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this before they was married, but I was just a side fling, basically.
think that might have been some kind of additional contributing factor to things that were going on before all this happened with Tara in your life? I mean, how did you deal with that?
Drinking. I mean, drugs. That's how I dealt with everything back then.
Was it, as far as alcohol, but what was the drug of choice back then?
Mostly pot, coke. I tried meth a couple of times. Didn't really particularly like it, but it'll do if you're in a pinch for a high.
So kind of like numbing things to numb the senses.
Yes, sir.
And I'm just going to point this out just because we're going to ride by it. That cleaners that we were talking about is up here on the right-hand side of the
Yes, sir. Right past Pizza Hut.
Right past the Pizza Hut?
Yeah.
Okay. And the dumpster itself, was it on the back of this or was it on the back of the main plaza?
It was on the back side of the plaza.
So the whole big plaza back there, or this one is small?
I think this one. It was on the back side around there.
Okay, so it was right behind this set of buildings?
Yes, sir.
So right behind the cleaners?
Yes, sir.
And you said your aunt used to work there?
She still runs it, I think.
Oh.
I mean, I wasn't even aware that was her place of work.
At the time?
Yes, sir. I had no clue.
Do you think maybe subconsciously your mind is like saying, well, this is someplace I'm familiar with?
Yeah, probably. I mean, like I said, everything after was irrational fear, just...
Of course, the train's coming through Fitzgerald. No, I'm going to turn to avoid that train. Sorry about that left turn. Sorry, Blair. Oh, I'm talking to Blair behind us.
Guess I think I heard your phone vibrate.
It's up here. Check with them out there, just to see if they are. If they are, then no. If they aren't, then yes. Well, I guess the train's done going past. Good. I don't mind telling you, we're going to video record what we do out there. So just, if I ask you to point to something, it's because we're actually doing the video.
Yes, sir.
If you don't mind. You said that since the cremation and the burning of her body, you've never come back out here again.
No, sir.
Have you ever, you've never had an opportunity to talk to anybody about all this, have you?
No, sir.
There's Tori in front of us, one of our other agents. Is it going to be on the right side or the left side of the road?
The right.
The right?
There'll be a store, and it's maybe a football field or two more. It's, like I said, it's been a long time.
Is there anything like a house right there or a marker that you can remember?
There used to be a house which we would take to get back into the field. I'm not actually sure where the main part of the field is.
Okay. Was there maybe like a fence or something in the front yard that kind of stood out to you?
I think there was a fence. I can't tell you for 100%.
Well, we'll go slow. If you see it, then we'll go from there.
Yes, sir.
And I think this store is the one on the left, the one you're talking about here at Lower Rebecca Road.
Yes, sir, I believe so. Like I said, it's been over a decade since I've been out
That's
here.
fine. We'll just go really slow if you think you see something that looks familiar to you once we get past out here. White fence is?
Yes, sir, I think so.
Okay.
So I don't remember all them houses back there.
Okay. We'll just slow down a little bit and see. This is it?
Yes, sir, I remember that house.
Okay.
Okay, so now we go ahead and start this.
Go right ahead. He's going to start video recording, all right?
Yes, sir.
So just keep going straight back?
Yes, sir.
So when you came out here, it was still dark with her.
Yes, sir. It was, like I said, it was barely sunrise.
Okay. But you didn't put her out like way far out into the woods. You kind of set her out.
No, sir. It was in an opening on the back end of the trees up here.
Okay. So kind of follow where that car right there is going?
Yes, sir. And should hang a left when we get to the tree line.
Okay. These sheds right here, is this the ones that you were talking about that had the wood and stuff in it?
Yes, sir. I believe so. It's the only ones out here. I thought they were wooden, though.
Okay. But you remember coming back up and having to get some wood out of there, like a truckload full?
Yes, sir.
So this is over here, you saying that this is kind of the area where you may have put her down first?
Yes, sir. It's somewhere in here, the exact spot.
I mean, it wasn't out here here in the main
No,
ordinance
sir.
that are off
No,
to the
sir.
side here?
It was, I think, right up in here, because I don't remember none of these smaller trees.
Okay.
I said I can't be 100% any. I mean, everything looks different.
Yeah. But you think it's somewhere along, probably along the wood line?
Yes,
thinking?
this is like right in here is where I left her, and we went back over there in the woods to cremate her.
So where those white trucks are right back there?
Yes, sir. I believe it's more to the right there.
Okay.
It says it's a lot thicker than it was.
I tell you what we'll do is we're going to pull down to where those trucks are and kind of let you look there first
Yes, sir.
and see if you recognize that area, and then if not, then we can move from there. How about that?
Yes, sir. That's fine. So I think this is the area there. If I ain't mistaken, there was a barbed wire fence not far.
Okay. Like I said, we'll walk over here, see where the tents are.
Yes,
We'll
sir.
walk over there and let you see that area first, if that's not where you think it is. I think there is a fence over here on the left.
That's what I'm thinking. Is this
All right, well, I tell you what, we'll go where you want to go first, and then we'll go over there. How about that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's going to let you out. And here's the seatbelt undone.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
You want me to? Thank you, sir.
How about that?
I appreciate that. So it's a lot thicker.
Yeah, see, there's the fence right there.
Yeah, isn't there a field though? I remember there being a field, an open field.
An open field?
Yes, sir.
Well, we can walk. I mean, if you... I'm following you. At this point, I'm leaving it up to you.
Yes, sir. It could be back there.
It could be over here. You want to walk? We'll follow you wherever
Yes,
you
sir.
want to go.
I'm not sure. I keep thinking there's a barbed wire fence somewhere.
Yeah, like I said, I know there's a fence over there on that side. But
Is there an orchard on the other side of them?
there is on that side over there. That's
Okay,
the orchard turns.
Okay, because it might be on the other side of the orchard that I'm thinking about.
Okay. Did Bo kind of take over at this point? You think is that why you're having a little bit harder time?
No, I was with him the whole time, and
But I mean, he knows this area better.
a lot better than I do. I mean, I said,
I mean, you asked him for help, right?
yes, sir.
You can kind of see what we're already kind of looking at.
Yes, sir. Remember there being a real big thicket, kind of like that, but we was on the other side of it. I mean, it was similar to that, but it wasn't that.
Well, I mean, we keep walking wherever you want to go. And just watch your step. There's briars and stuff out here.
Yes, sir. Oh, shit.
You think down here?
Well, I'm trying to get around.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Yes, sir. I didn't want to drag everybody through that shit.
I understand. Just take your time. Like I said, those briars are kind of thick.
Yes, sir. I've had my fair dealings with them things.
I can imagine. Watch your step.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm just keeping you following.
deer paths, things like that, that helps. It could be over here.
I mean, it kind of had to be open, right? Because y'all were worried about catching fire to the woods.
Yes, sir. It was open, but said it was 10, 15 feet in front of a thick part like that. Like I say, it's been a decade though. I mean, how?
And you haven't been back out here.
No, sir.
Is there a pile of wood over there?
It could be. It looks like there's a pile of wood in there.
Another pile right over there too. I mean, when y'all got done burning it, I mean,
Yeah, we burned all the wood. I mean,
you don't remember seeing any bones or anything left after y'all got done burning?
no, sir. I mean, I assumed an animal had drug off anything that could have been left. I mean,
Okay.
so like I said, there wasn't nothing but ashes when I come back.
Well, like I said, just take the time for a few more minutes and just get your bearings and just do the best you can. That's all we can ask you to do.
It's, ain't none of this clear enough for, because we didn't walk 10, 15 foot to the truck to where we cremated her.
So it was pretty much right off that road.
Yes, sir, but exactly where, I'm not sure.
That's fine.
I mean,
That's fine. All we can get you to do is, but out here is where it happened.
yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. I mean, you have no doubts about that. I mean,
No,
you took
sir.
us all the way to that road where we parked.
Yes, sir. I'm pretty sure that's the same road, but finding the exact spot's going to be.
I mean, the only thing we can do is give it the old college try, you know?
Yes, sir. This don't look familiar. I think we've come too far down.
Okay. You want to go back out to the main road and walk back down? And
Yes,
because you
sir.
said you remember seeing a fence, though,
Yes, sir.
and the fence is on that side.
It could, like I say, everything just looks different. I mean,
Okay.
so it's been at least 10 years.
Hang on your cigarette. You've been letting it burn. Get your smoke. We got another one in the car for you, too, so.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
No problem.
I can't walk and chew gum.
Well, I saw that. I figured I'd help you with that.
I appreciate it. It's just, none of this seems familiar. I mean, there's got to be a thicket like that. So that's where you're going to find the spot is, I mean, it probably covered it up.
Do you think just the time that it's been out here, the pine straw, everything's covered the area?
Well, just that type of undergrowth, it don't take, 3 or 4 years for shit like that to get out of hand.
I think we went this way. If we're going back out.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It just don't, nothing looked familiar. And we could be on the wrong side of the road too.
Okay. So you just don't think you're going to be able to, based on what you see right now?
Not with any certainty, no, sir.
Okay.
That's it. It is.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Oh.
Just watch your step going down. Hey, there's your barbed wire there.
Yes, sir.
I mean, do you remember crossing the barbed wire?
No, sir. I'm not sure this fence was here then.
Maybe not this point, but this has been here a while.
Yeah. I mean,
There's some old barbed wire on that thing right there.
yes, sir. What I was seeing in my head is just completely different. And like I said, it should be an opening. When we cremated her, it was an opening like that. You know, a wide open space so the woods wouldn't catch on fire.
Right. But right now, just based on what you're seeing at the time, you just don't think it's possible.
No, sir.
But without a shadow of a doubt in your
No,
mind,
sir.
you're certain that this is the area
Yes, sir. This is the area.
where y'all cremated her.
Anywhere within a couple football field radius of this whole road, I'm 100% positive.
So she was out in the orchard. Y'all loaded her up in the truck and brought her down this road.
Yes, sir.
But you just can't say exactly for sure where.
No, sir. It just...
Okay. All right then. We're going back to the truck then.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I appreciate you trying. I got you back here.
Oh, thank you.
And watch your step going down.
Yes, sir.
I got you back here so you can't fall.
Yeah, I've got slide-ons. I got unnaturally wide feet, so a lot of tennis shoes don't fit.
I'll tell you what, I got another cigarette back here for you. And I'll let you smoke that, and then we'll head on back to town.
Yes, sir. Like I say, it's going to be in a clearing. I mean, it just...
That's all you can remember is a clearing.
Yes, sir, there was a clearing, and I mean, I'm pretty sure I left a bag of trash, too.
You left a bag of trash?
Yes, sir, but 10 years
You
ain't...
said that was after the fact. You put the trash on top of it.
I,
Or did you burn that in a separate location?
no, I didn't burn all the trash. I just threw some around. And there
Do
was
you remember what kind of trash it was?
just house trash, paper brown, you know, them drinking cups.
Was it in like a plastic bag?
Yes, sir, a white plastic bag.
And that was right in the same spot that the body
Yes,
was
sir, it was, if I remember correctly, it was about 10 feet behind it.
Okay.
Thank you. I mean, I said, none of this seemed familiar.
Okay. Well, I know, and I do know that things can change over time. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yes, sir, but like you talked about giving them people peace of mind, and it's a big part of it.
I know. You were thinking here?
Maybe, I mean, mean, it's open. That's the biggest thing I remember is it being open. Look like that fence ends right there. So much new growth.
But like you said again, though, you didn't come this far off the road.
No, sir, it wasn't very far. It was. I just keep thinking I'm gonna see something that's.
Okay. I mean, we came out here, we've looked, we've tried.
I said it's not far off this road. I just, like I say, I don't recognize any of it.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll head back then.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry I couldn't be more help, man.
I know. I know you're doing the best you can.
Yes. I hate to ask, can you pull my pants up a little bit? They're about to fall off my ass.
I got you. I need to grab you by the belt.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can't stand sagging.
Yeah, me neither.
It's why
Do you remember what side of the road it may have?
everything looks
Different.
Yes, sir.
Well, man, they can change stuff.
There's nothing more. Yes, sir. There's nothing more than I want to help.
Oh, man, you're doing what you can do. That's all you can do.
You think you'd remember shit like this, so, I mean...
Well, I'm sure you spend a lot of time trying to block that kind of stuff out, you know?
Well, yes, sir. I did a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Looking for answers in the bottom of a big liquor bottle.
Yeah.
Never found one. Didn't stop me looking. I say it was a little open area. It's more than 20 feet, you know, of open area.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I do not know. my military career was spent picking up cigarette butts. I will never throw one down
Don't
again.
drop 'em no more, huh?
No, sir. I'll pick them up when I see them, but I don't throw them on the ground.
Fair enough.
I got a little pit bulldog, and I'll take and walk him, and it's cold. I put on a little sweatshirt, and I'll have 4 or 5 little short butts like that in my pocket from smoking and walking him.
Yeah. Is that dog that came through the door yesterday?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
He's friendly as he can be, but he's...
Makes a lot of racket.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's why I asked y'all to step kind of to the side. He's a titty baby. I mean, he don't understand he's a 90-pound baby.
Mm-hmm. Gets all up in your lap and stuff.
Yes, sir. When it comes to other male dogs, he'll go straight for them, but everybody else, I got 3 little stray cats I picked up over the years, just as gentle with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, them dogs got a bad reputation.
I got a black dog. It ain't no like full blood. It's a mix, yeah, but it's got a lot of boxer pit in it, one of the two, and it's kind of like that too. It likes to dominate another male dog I have, but with people and then other animals, he's fine.
That's how the dog I have, his daddy was a full-blooded pit. His mama was a mud boxer.
Mm-hmm.
She's real small, but she had a boxer head, short snout.
Yeah.
You could, when he was younger, he's about 10 years old now, maybe 9, but you could see the pit build. Now he's just getting fat and lazy.
Yeah. See it in his shoulders and stuff.
Yes, sir. He used to take and jump that chain link fence just like
No problem, huh?
just sitting on his ass and jump over it. He tried it about 6 months ago, fell right on his flipping head. Getting
Not
old.
as easy no more, huh? Yeah. Or 6 foot privacy fence, so no problem.
Yeah.
From the ground, not even running.
It amazes you what them fuckers can do. You know, I've seen them climb, like you're talking about, them 6 foot fences.
Yeah, he used to hook his paw over the top of it and scurry up them back legs. And,
Like a damn squirrel.
yep. Perch up top of it like a squirrel or bird or something. Yeah, but he's a good dog. He gets a little, tear some shit up every once in a while, but
They all do.
yeah. Oh yeah.
This thing kills me, especially out here where I live. It's every other day I see a stray animal running around. Somebody done dropped it off or neglected it and it's run off. And hell, through the years I probably found 20 of them homes.
Yeah.
You know, found a little Chihuahua. Looked like she had been one of them brood mares, basically, where they just spat out puppies.
Yeah.
And I don't know how old she was, but I gave her to my dad. You couldn't have found a happier little fucking dog. And he has German Shepherds.
Yeah.
And that little dog come in and took over.
Really?
Little mama bear.
Yeah.
So she was, I don't know what happened with her, but it was about a year and she just died. You know, it was...
Well, at least you did what you could for her.
It broke my heart, man. I went out there to pick her up, and she just pissed all over me. Just so terrified of people. And I can't do animals.
Yeah. It's both of my dogs are strays, so.
Well, that's the one thing I'll never understand is why people will go to them pet stores and pay $1,000. And you can get a dog for free at any damn pound. Just as good, love you just as much, probably more.
Yeah, appreciative.
Yeah.
You can tell too, especially one that's been on the street for a little while, and you bring it in and feed it and give it a home and give it somewhere to sleep at night. They ain't gonna leave you for nothing.
Nope. They have a lot better than people.
That's right.
The dog ain't ever gonna tell you to fuck off when you're in a bad mood.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Dog's gonna love it to you no matter what.
You can spank them, rub their nose in their shit, they'll forget about it.
They get over it. Yep. They just want to please you.
Yeah. It's something about that, though, just that undying love. I think all people need that.
Yeah.
At least part of it.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
It's easy to forget about that kind of stuff.
well, I say it's small, but it's something. You know, something to hold on to in the craziness of the world right now.
Yeah. That's right, man. Gotta find something. Have something. So your folks live beside you?
It's my mom and my stepdad.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I don't live far from my folks either.
Yeah. My stepdad, he's been in poor health for so long. I didn't want him to come today, but they're good people, and
Yeah.
you know they're gonna stand behind me. You know, and
That's good, man.
it just makes me feel worse. You know.
Well, what happened, happened. And all you can do is make it as right as you can now.
I'm
That's what
trying
you do. That's,
God help me, I am.
That's right. That's right. See a lot of deer sign out here, too.
That's what I thought I saw something like a boar or something while ago.
You grew up doing any deer hunting out here?
I ain't much of a hunter.
Yeah.
I ain't much. You hide in a tree and wait on an animal.
Yeah.
Go fucking chase it with a knife.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the meat. I don't see. I like cattle. I ain't gonna sit here and say killing the animals to eat it is wrong.
Yeah.
But
It's not what you do for
well,
entertainment.
yeah, I've seen guys that just bring 4 or 5 spikes and
Yeah.
baby alligator,
No.
just whatever the fuck they can catch, and they don't even eat the meat.
Yeah.
You know,
Just doing it for fun.
just to shoot something,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's
That ain't what it's intended for.
no.
All right, let's roll.
Yes, sir.
All right. Put him in that seat and I'll have to get the belt. Yeah, I got it.
Yes, sir.
Got it? Yeah, I got it.
Yes.
It's kind of warm out there, ain't it?
Yes, sir. It is. I thought it was going to start raining.
Yeah, I think we all kind of thought that today. Big old swig on that down there. Want to set it down for you?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
No problem. You know, and I got to thinking about this too. You know, when you were talking about that, I mean, did you know after you'd gone into the house, did you know whose house it was?
No, sir.
Or did you know, like, after you'd done what you did, then you knew who she was?
After I could see her, I kind of knew. I mean, I
I mean, you had to know her to get the call 411 to know to call her house.
Yes, sir. Like I said, I seen the pictures on the wall,
And at that point, you were like, okay, I know who this is.
yeah.
Get some air flowing in here. How about that? Matt, are you good on air? Yeah, I'm good on air.
Does it bend back around?
It does, but there's no other road besides
Okay.
this one. It's just a flowing
Yes, sir.
orchard at that point. This is the only one with a road.
Yes, sir. I just.
You know, and you're saying, I mean, if you put the body here, I don't think you're going to drive way over there.
Yes, sir.
It would have been pretty close.
Like I said, just everything looks different.
Let me ask you this. You said something about you remember maybe, and you could be mistaken, but you said you remember wrapping her in a quilt.
Yes, sir.
When you walked her outside, basically, and put her in the, and you said you were holding her like this.
Yes, sir.
But you had it wrapped in a quilt. I guess that was to kind of hide who it was or what you were doing, because it was getting daylight.
Yes, sir.
Did the quilt itself, did it come from the house?
No, sir.
You brought it with you?
No, sir. I went when I got stuff to the quilts and everything.
Right.
I got that.
Okay, so the quilt came from your house?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And where is this quilt now?
Somewhere in the trash or...
So it's been gotten rid of years ago?
Yes, sir.
And I'm gonna tell you this. I know you're talking to me, and I know you're willing to talk to me at any point in time. I'm certain from this point on.
Yes, sir.
Like we're doing, there may be other people that aren't GBI agents that want to talk to you about what's going on. I'm asking you now not to talk to them about this case other than with us.
Yes, sir. No problem. I'll do that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing it because I'm trying to, we've got to protect not only
I understand.
I don't know.
the interest of this case, but you and your family as well.
Yes, sir. I understand.
No, I don't think. No, he is. All right. All right, bud.
Yes. Yeah, that was just a quick set of question I had with the whole. You would have had to have known who it was. That's why when I say when you say that it was kind of random, going there was random. You just were basically taking a chance that there was nobody else there.
Yes, sir. That was the best hope, was nobody was home, and so the only reason I could even possibly be that stupid is I was fucked up.
Right.
It wasn't a rational thought, because if I'd been rational, I'd never went in.
Right. Do you still have the credit card that you used?
No, sir.
But as far as you know, you can't think of anything you took.
No, sir.
You went to get money. You clearly, you said you never got the money. You just kind of basically threw the whole purse and keys away.
Yes, sir.
Do you think that maybe part of, in your mind was, and this, as you think about it a little more, do you think that maybe getting rid of the clothes, that it may have had some, you were thinking at the time it may have had some kind of evidence to link you to it, and maybe you had removed her clothes and then wrapped her in the blanket?
I don't think so. I just don't remember taking her clothes off. I don't.
Right. And we've already established, this isn't anything, sexual or relationship-wise or anything like that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
see it coming. Lost the oil pan.
Yeah, probably knocked your noggin on the top of
Oh,
the roof
yeah.
of the car as you bounced up too, didn't you?
And my ass bone too.
I can imagine.
Well, I was 16, 17 being dumb.
We all are dumb at 16 and 17. 20, 21, 22, we're all that way.
I think we're all hardwired to be fucking retarded.
Especially boys.
Yes, especially.
Yeah, just like I said, there'll be a booking process that they go through, and we're going to give them as much information as we can. Make sure and tell them about any kind of medical stuff you have. Go through that stuff. But if anybody asks you specifics about the investigation, my advice is don't talk to them about the investigation. You talk to us and us only.
Yes, sir.
It needs to be a one, me and you kind of conversation.
Yes.
Now, if another GBI agent comes to you, he or she is coming to you in my direction,
Yes,
and they'll
sir.
tell you that, and you can talk to them.
Yes, sir.
There will be a moment where you're going to have a first appearance, and at that point, any conversations we have to you, we're going to express, look, you understand that these are what your rights are.
Yes, sir.
Everything you do is going to be completely voluntary, just like it has been today.
Yes, sir.
Okay? I just want to keep those lines of communication open in case we come up with some more questions or something that we want to be able to ask you. You have no problems in coming and telling us.
Yes, sir. I have none at all. I mean, you've been courteous and respectful. I mean,
We had that conversation about why we're like that.
yes, sir.
I mean, you do right, you do wrong, you still deserve respect as a
Yes,
person.
sir.
I even talked to you folks. Like I said, your dad was in a little bit of disbelief. I'll be
Yes,
honest with you.
sir.
I think they were in shock.
I had to lie to him for a long, long time. And it's not something I'm proud of.
I know.
It's, y'all ever play golf?
I do.
You do?
I've always wanted to come down here and play, but I guess I got it closed now.
I don't know about that one. There's a little place going towards Tifton off 82.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't bad.
Is that the one right there by the interstate?
No, sir. It's before that. It's
Like Piney Woods or something? Pine Woods?
yes, sir.
I've played that course before.
Yes, sir. It ain't a bad little par nine.
There's another one on the other side over going towards Warwick called Ironwoods.
Yes, sir. That's
We used to go play that one a lot too.
my brother and my dad's game. I was their relief. I'd have one good shot around. It was usually with the pinching wedge.
Something short.
Yes, sir.
Grip it and rip it tight.
Yes, sir. Well, I had a baseball swing, and you can't baseball swing a pinching wedge.
No, I don't work too well, typically.
Mm-hmm.
But a bad day at golf is better than a good day at work anytime.
That's one of them sports I always respected, because there ain't nobody else. Just you and a little ball.
That's true. That is true. That game's 99% mental and 1% physical.
They say the Scottish have 18 holes because there's 18 shots of whiskey in a bottle.
I can believe that.
Especially,
I can definitely believe that.
some of them fucking courses. On a 50, 60 mile an hour wind day.
Oh, I know. When you watch them playing over there, the British Open and stuff like that, yeah.
My dad's religious about it. He'll watch a golf tournament before he'll watch a football game.
we're going to do is we're going to go to the Irwin County, the Sheriff's Office side,
Yes, sir.
and we're going to go ahead and start the booking process, okay?
Yes, sir.
You probably won't see any of us today, but more than likely you'll see me tomorrow again,
Okay.
because I've got to actually do the service. I've got to go get the warrant, and I've got to actually serve you with that, okay?
Yes, sir.
So that's the next stage with us. Is you're going to be processed, you're going to be charged, and they'll probably take you down to the big detention center.
Yes, sir.
And then from there, I've got to go get the warrants tomorrow for whatever. There's going to be more than one charge. I just don't know what all we're going to do just yet.
Yes, sir. I understand.
And then we're going to kind of just move on from there. But you'll see me tomorrow because I have to actually serve you with those, okay?
Yes, sir.
We've already done the arrest record. That's it. But you'll continue to see me over the next weeks. I mean, it's not going to be without a doubt. You'll see me.
Yes, sir.
I'll say this though, you do seem a little, I know it's all rough and it's been a rough day, but you do seem like it's kind of been a relief to get this out of you.
Yes. Ain't no telling what kind of toll that shit. You can't keep something like that locked up. If you can, you're a fucking monster.
Well, I know you said you're not going to hurt yourself, but I'm going to tell them to put you on suicide watch.
I understand.
My concern at this point is definitely for your safety.
Yes, sir.
I don't want you to do anything to hurt yourself or others, but I need to make sure that you're safe too, okay?
Yes, sir.
get you in here.
Yes, sir.
Where do you want me to take him for booking?
From this next. Let me go ask him.
Book him in. He needs to be booked in.
Okay.
I didn't do anything.
We don't house them here. You have
That's what I'm saying. I mean, you want me to take him to the detention center?
Who you got it? What is it?
I do. He's being charged with murder.
Oh, no, we're handling it for you. You got the keys? Give me the keys.
All right.
You just need to get him fingerprinted and secure the detention center.
I mean, if y'all,
No,
I'd be happy if y'all want to take him down there. I mean, all our arrest records and everything, I just need to hand it to you for processing. The warrants will be in hand tomorrow.
Okay. Well, we'll just go ahead and book him on murder down there.
Yeah, for now, and then we'll have additional charges until then. But
Where's he from?
he's from here. I'll be able to get with you more on it tomorrow. But I mean, he's not giving us any problem at all. He's got some medical issues that need to be considered.
Very young. I think I met him, didn't I?
You probably met his brother Logan.
That's Logan. Yes, sir.
And the time now is 4:32.
You need to readjust all this.
I'm actually going to move it out of the way.
All right, y'all okay? Anybody ready for a break? Thank you. So what?
Good to continue.
Yes, ma'am.
Agent Chevelle, at the end, right before you dropped him off at the Sheriff's Department, did I understand you to be asking the defendant, or to be telling the defendant that you were going to see him again?
Sure.
Okay. And what was the purpose in which you would have to see him again, specifically the next day?
To serve the warrants on.
Okay. Now, for those who may not be familiar with what we exactly mean by that, when you say you're serving warrants on him, what does that mean?
It means I've actually went and obtained the warrants from whatever magistrate or judge, Superior Court, and then proceed to serve him with the actual warrant itself, the body of the warrant.
And are you required to do that when someone has been arrested?
I don't have to, but personally I don't have to. Other deputies, other officers, but yes, they have to be served with that warrant.
And in this situation, because you arrested the defendant without a warrant in place already, did you have a time frame in which you had to obtain his arrest warrants?
I did.
And I know you said that, or did I understand you to say that while you don't have to personally do it, that those warrants do have to be served on a defendant?
Yes.
And when we say served, I mean essentially they have to be advised of what those warrants are for?
Yes.
Did you serve the arrest warrants on the defendant the next day?
I believe I did, yes.
And so, let's see, this interview takes place on February 22nd of 2017. When did you obtain the arrest warrants for the defendant? Do you recall?
The next day, the 23rd.
And then, do you recall, or did I also hear you speaking to him about what you referred to as a first appearance hearing?
Yes.
Okay. And can you explain to the jury what you meant by a first appearance hearing.
The first time he would be in front of a judicial officer.
And did the defendant have a first appearance hearing?
He did.
Were you present at that first appearance hearing?
I was.
Was the defendant present at that first appearance hearing?
He was.
At the time of that hearing, had you already served the defendant with his warrants?
Yes.
When you served the defendant with his warrants, do you recall if that occurred at the detention center or here at the courthouse?
I don't recall.
When you were specifically here at the courthouse, the first appearance hearing, where did that take place?
Here at the courthouse.
And when you were here at the courthouse for the first appearance hearing, did you speak with the defendant?
I did.
And where were you when you spoke with him?
The side room over there.
When you spoke with him that day, did you ask him any questions about this case?
No.
Did you ask him any further questions about the murder of Tara Grinstead at all?
No.
Do you recall discussing his charges with him really at all?
Other than what they were when he got served with the warrants.
Okay. But specifically the interview or the conversation you had with him here, back in this room, did you discuss the charges with him at all that you can recall?
No.
And sorry, can I speak
No.
a little bit for me? Could be my ears are gone from how loud that was on the backside. What did you talk with the defendant about?
Family, mostly. Again, like I said during the interview, which was heard, I generally had concern for his welfare. I talked about his welfare. This wasn't the end of the world. Family was still there. He still had a lot of family that cared about him. Continued to talk with his family, reach out to his family, things like that.
I don't want to go into what any of his family told you, but when you went out and when you left the room during that first interview to advise his family of his confession, essentially, did the family speak to you about any concerns?
Yes.
And during your interview and your time with Ryan Duke, did he ever indicate to you whether or not he had previously tried to commit suicide?
He did.
Now, do you recall exactly what time frame it was in which he had tried to commit suicide previously that he told you about?
I don't remember the exact specific. I know it was obviously after the incident with Miss Grinstead, over the years. I don't think there was a specific year or day, but it was the years subsequent to that. He was drinking, things like that. Yeah.
Is it your belief that he actually tried to, based on what he told you, that he tried to kill himself once or more than once?
More than one.
Now, as a result of what the parents expressed to you, as well as what he told you, did you have any measures put in place at the Irwin County Detention Center?
I had him put on suicide watch.
And what is suicide watch?
Essentially, it's an additional check that I want the jail to do on him periodically to make sure that he's okay physically. They will also usually isolate them from other inmates. Sometimes they remove their clothing, give them like a gown or a suit or something where they cannot hurt themselves.
Do you know what the specific suicide watch protocols are at this jail, however?
I don't.
In this case, do you know if he was in fact placed on suicide watch?
I believe he was, yes.
The things that we've been discussing, your concerns and the concerns of his family, were those discussed with him here at the courthouse back in the room?
Yes.
Following his first appearance hearing, did you ever see Mr. Duke again?
Twice.
Tell us about the first time that you saw him, please.
Sure, I was at the Osceola Police Department and called over. I think I had the chief call the detention center and asked him to bring, this is several weeks, 2 or 3 weeks after the first appearance and everything, and had him bring him over to the Osceola Police Department. We sat down in like a little side room there at the Osceola Police Department. And just general talk, nothing about the investigation. I was very specific. I don't want to talk about the investigation. I'm not here to talk about the investigation. I was worried about him. I had talked with his family since then.
And don't tell me anything that his family said, but do you have knowledge as to whether or not he was taking phone calls from his family members at that point?
I don't think he was, no.
Okay. And that conversation that took place at the police department in which he was brought over, about how long did that take? Were you with him?
I'd say 15, 20 minutes.
During that time period, did you ever ask him any questions about the murder of Tara Grinstead?
No.
During that time period, did you ever ask him any questions about the burning of Tara Grinstead's body?
No.
And then you said you spoke with him one other time. When was that?
It was at the detention center here in town. This was probably a week or two later.
And how did it come to be that you were at the detention center speaking with him?
I was going by there to request see if he had jail phone calls, request those copies of those jail calls, any that he had made from the detention center. He was actually coming out of or was in a visitation with his father, I believe, and when he came out of the visitation, I was actually standing right there and asked if I could speak with him for a few minutes.
Okay. Did he speak with you?
He did.
And at that point, I guess let me ask this first. When you asked if you could speak with him at the detention center, would you have had a gun on at the detention center?
No.
Okay. Other than that, would you have been dressed similarly to what we've seen in the videos today?
Yes.
Okay. What did you and he talk about that day?
Pretty much the same things we've talked about before, his welfare. I told him, I said, I'm glad you're seeing your family, your father. Again, without going into details, I talked with members of his family, and I encouraged him to, reach out to his family, stay in touch with his family. He talked about books.
Don't tell us anything he said during that time period, okay? So, during those 3 conversations we've just discussed, did you ever video record them?
No.
Did you ever audio record them?
I did not.
Did you complete a summary or a report as it related to those 3?
I did later on, yes.
Later on?
Yes.
Initially, did you do that?
No.
Why?
I didn't feel like they were of any, pertinent issue of the case. I wasn't talking about the case. I was talking just generally like a welfare check. So initially, I didn't document it.
As part of GBI policy, are you to complete a summary or a report as to any investigative action?
Correct.
Did you consider any of those 3 conversations investigative actions?
No.
And again, did you use anything that you obtained from those 3 conversations in order to, did you use them as evidence against the defendant in any way?
No.
So I want to go back now and talk about some of the things that you and the defendant discussed that day and kind of clear up some things. Are you familiar with whether or not, and again, I don't want to go into what anyone else said, but are you familiar with whether or not Ryan Duke and Bo Duke had any conversations of any nature prior to your interview with Ryan Duke on February 22nd?
I am aware, yes.
Okay. Did you specifically ask either of them to do that?
Yes.
What did you request of the person?
Can I say the name?
You can say who it was, yes. I just don't want you to tell me what anybody said other than yourself.
Sure. So, at the conclusion of the interview with Bo Dukes on February the 21st, which was that Tuesday, I asked him to reach out and communicate with Ryan Duke in order to try and corroborate what he had told us during his interview.
Okay. That's okay. Do you have knowledge that they did communicate?
Yes.
And in fact, do you have copies of that communication?
I do. I placed them in the case file.
Thank you. I don't think I asked you this earlier, but specifically, but I want to ask it now. Prior to your interview with Ryan Duke on February 22nd of 2017, did you ever threaten him or intimidate him in any way to get him to speak with you?
No.
Did you ever promise him anything or any hope of leniency if he would speak with you?
No.
Did any other agent or law enforcement officer do that in your presence?
No.
At any point during your interview with Ryan Duke on February 22nd, 2017, did he indicate to you that he did not wish to speak with you?
Did he ever indicate he did not want to speak with me? No.
Did he ever indicate to you that he did not wish to speak with you without an attorney?
No.
Back to February 21st, when you first spoke with Mr. Duke at his residence. I know we heard y'all talking about that some on the recording we just heard. That particular conversation, did you tell Mr. Duke why you wanted to interview him at the police department?
On that Tuesday,
On February 21st, when you went to his house, did you tell him why you wanted him to come the next day to the police department?
I told him I wanted to talk about an old case.
Okay. Did you tell him what case it was?
I did not.
Did you ever use Tara Grinstead's name?
I did not.
Did you ever use any words other than old case?
No.
Okay. And to be fair, did you or the Perry office have other old cases that were being investigated at that time?
Yes.
Okay. Did you or the Perry office have other old cases that were being investigated that were from this general area?
Yes.
Are you aware of any cases, specifically in Turner County, that were old cases that were still active investigations at that time?
I am.
When Ryan Duke came to speak with you on February 22nd, 2017, before you turned the recorder on, did you tell him what you wanted to speak with him about?
No.
Before you turned the recorder on, did you ever use the name Tara Grinstead?
I did not.
Before you turned the recorder on, did you tell any of his family it was about Tara Grinstead?
No.
And I know because when it first started, it was even harder to hear. But when you started that recorder, did you ever tell him that you wanted to speak with him about Tara Grinstead?
Not.
Did you tell him that you wanted to speak with him about Tara Grinstead? It's not a leading question. Thank you.
Can you repeat, please?
Yes. Did you ever, after turning on the recorder, did you ever tell him that you wished to speak with him about Tara Grinstead?
No.
Who was the first person to use either the full name or part of the name of Tara Grinstead that day?
Mr. Duke?
And do you recall what Mr. Duke specifically said when he used her name?
He called her, I think he said Miss Grinstead.
Okay. And how did that name come up? What did he say in reference to Miss Grinstead?
I asked him, did he know? I said, well, the day before, I never mentioned to you what we wanted to talk about. Do you know what we want to talk about? And he acknowledged, I think it's about Miss Grinstead. My next statement was, do you know why I want to talk about Miss Grinstead? And he goes, because I was involved, ma'am.
Okay. Before he made that statement that he thought it was about Miss Grinstead, had you heard anyone use the name Tara Grinstead in his presence?
No.
So shifting further into the interview, when you spoke with the defendant about what vehicle he used to get to Tara's house that evening or early morning, what vehicle did he tell you he used?
He used Bo Dukes' truck.
Okay. And at the time, was he able to give you a description of Bo Duke's truck?
White Ford F-150.
Okay. Throughout the course of this investigation, have you learned whether or not in 2017 that truck still existed?
It did not exist any longer. It had been destroyed.
Okay. However, were you able to get pictures, older pictures of the truck in a similar condition to what it would have been in 2005?
I believe so. It had been involved in an accident,
Okay.
and the insurance company that worked the accident, investigated the accident, handled the claim on the accident, took photographs of the truck at the time of the accident, and I was able to get those photographs from the insurance company.
Okay. And those pictures, were they made part of your case file?
They were.
Chairman, opposing counsel to Mark States Exhibits 202 and 203. I'm going to show you what's in Mark States Exhibits 202 and 203 and ask you to recognize those.
I do.
How do you recognize those?
Exhibit number 202 and 203 are copies of those photographs that I obtained of Mr. Dukes' truck from the insurance company.
And are those true and accurate depictions of what the truck would have looked like around the time of the murder of Tara Grinstead?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. Your Honor, this time I would tender in evidence States Exhibits 202 and 203.
Any objection?
No objection.
Thank you. Those are admitted without objection.
And may I publish those to the jury?
Yes.
Exhibit number 202, which has been previously admitted into evidence, is the left-hand side of Bo's truck.
Okay. And again, when you say Bo's truck, does this truck match the description of what Ryan Duke told you he drove to Tara Grinstead's residence on February 23rd?
Yes.
And then State's Exhibit 203, again, can you tell us what we're looking at there?
This is the same vehicle described in the previous photograph. It's just a different angle of the photo, looking from front to back.
Okay. And again, is this the vehicle that Ryan Duke told you he drove to Tara Grinstead's residence on February 23rd, 2005?
Yes, it does match the description.
Okay. Excuse me, yes. Does it match the description of what he told you?
Yes, ma'am.
While I'm thinking about that, at any point, did the defendant tell you whether or not this incident occurred on Saturday night, February 22nd, or Sunday night or Sunday morning, February 23rd?
We were talking about the incident based on the timeline he provided. It would have been the early morning hours of Sunday, the 23rd.
Okay. What did he say he was doing prior to going to Miss Grinstead's home?
He was at his house.
And what was he doing at his house?
He had been there. I think he said he had passed out, and then when he got back up, he wanted to get high. And
Okay. And how did he say that he went about getting Bo Duke's truck?
he said he went into his pocket and got his keys out.
Okay.
Judge, can we just listen to the full interview? We're going to repeat the entire interview. It's already been played.
Just I'm asking.
What's your objection?
Already been asked and answered.
Repetitive?
It's repetitive, yes.
I guess they're arguing cumulative. That would be, I'm asking him what he remembers from that interview. Certainly, given that there were some audio issues, I'm only emphasizing portions of the interview that relate to exhibits we're about to discuss or have discussed.
You get the last thing. Anything further, Ms. Merchant?
No, Judge.
I overrule that objection.
Thank you. Sorry, forgot the question I was on. How did he indicate that he got Bo Duke's truck that evening or into the early morning of February 23rd?
His words were he stole the truck. He stole Bo's truck, got the keys out of Bo's pocket, his pants pocket, and then took his truck.
Did he indicate to you where Bo was or what Bo was doing when he took the keys out of his pocket?
I don't think he said specifically. I think I may have said he may have been, was he intoxicated, passed out, sleeping, something like that. And,
Okay.
I don't think he specifically said that.
Now, at some point during the interview, did you and he ever discuss whether or not he actually took anything from Miss Grinstead's home other than her body?
No, he said he never took anything from the house except the person keys.
Okay. Now, when he told you he had taken her purse and keys, was that something that stood out to you as part of the investigation?
Yes.
And why was that?
Just because I think it was pretty common knowledge, I think at the beginning, that her purse and keys were actually missing from the house. Several people, family members, had talked about that. So to identify things he specifically took from the house that correlated with what we had learned in the investigation, I thought would be important.
Now, did he indicate whether or not he had a very clear recollection of what happened after he hit Miss Grinstead?
Other than he ran. He said that he got scared and he ran.
At any point, did you speak with him about what he may have done with the keys and the purse?
Yes.
And understanding he said he didn't have a very clear recollection, what did he indicate to you that he may have done with those?
He confirmed that he threw the keys and the purse into a dumpster located behind a cleaner's building in Fitzgerald.
Now, are you familiar with that location?
I wasn't until this time frame that we're talking about now, the 2 or 3 days, the 21st and 22nd.
And were you able to confirm whether or not he did in fact have a family member that worked or managed that particular dry cleaner?
I believe so. I believe we checked on that.
Okay. Showing opposing counsel to the Martin States Exhibits 204. May I approach the witness?
Yes.
to show you the Martin States Exhibit 204. I ask you to take a look at that for me, please.
Okay.
Do you recognize what's depicted in 204?
Exhibit number 204 is a picture that I took from behind that cleaners.
Hang on just a second. You want to turn it on?
I'm sorry, I thought I asked him how he recognized it. So don't tell us exactly what it
Don't
is.
describe what you do yet.
Okay, yes, I know it is.
Okay. Did you actually take that picture?
I did.
And is that picture a true and accurate depiction of what that location looked like in 2017?
Yes.
Based on the description or the conversation you had with Brian Duke, did the location in 2017 appear at least somewhat consistent with what it would have been in 2005?
I can't say that for 100% certain. I could speculate and say it probably is generally the same, but in 2005 I never saw what it looked like.
Sorry, I didn't mean to speak over. Let me ask this a little differently. Specifically, in 2017, when you went to this location, were there still dumpsters back there as the defendant described?
Yes.
I sustain that.
Okay. In 2017, were there any items that were still there that the defendant described to you?
Yes.
And what were they?
The dumpsters.
And would this picture be a true and accurate depiction of what you saw?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I would tender to evidence State's Exhibit
204. Mr. Merchant, any objection?
No, Judge.
I submitted without objection. Thank you.
May I publish that to the jury? And again, now that they're able to see it, can you describe for us what we're seeing here?
Obviously, you can see the front hood scoop of my vehicle. So we had pulled around to the back side of the dumpsters. I believe this was right after the interview with Mr. Duke ended, and we were on our way back to Fitzgerald to the scene, and I stopped at the cleaners and photographed the dumpsters, I believe. I can't remember if I did it that day or the day before.
Thank you. Just one, please. Okay. We talked earlier about whether or not you noticed any manifestations generally of intoxication or impairment. I want to talk specifically about why you were out at the Orchard or the Pine Grove area. In addition to the video footage we saw, was the defendant walking around before and after that?
Yes.
At any point, did the defendant appear to be having difficulty managing, more difficulty than you managing the area?
No.
Now, I know I asked you earlier about whether or not he was in handcuffs at the police department. Was he ever placed in handcuffs?
He was.
And at what point was he placed in handcuffs?
When we were getting ready to leave the police department. Matter of fact, you can actually hear it on the video. You can hear the click when I'm putting the handcuffs on them. They were in the front
Yes, sir.
here, and then he was escorted out of the building with the handcuffs on.
Did he still have those handcuffs on while the entire time y'all were at the Orchard area?
He did.
In addition to having on handcuffs, was he doing any other activity which might have divided his attention from walking?
Smoking, walking, talking.
Okay. Did those things, the fact that he was in handcuffs and smoking a cigarette, seem to in any way impair his ability to navigate that area?
No.
Was that just a flat area with no obstructions?
No.
Okay. And at any point did you and he have to go up any hills or down any hills?
Yeah, there were small undulations in the topography of that general area.
Did you assist him in doing that?
I think I might have. It was like a barbed wire fence that I put my hand on, I think, at one point in time.
Okay.
But I don't think we may have stepped over. I can't remember if we did or didn't.
During the course of your interview with the defendant, did he ever correct you when you were asking him questions?
Sometimes he did, yes.
Can you give the jury an example that you can recall from your memory of a time that he corrected you when you were asking a question?
I'm sorry, I can't write on the spot, but
That's
I know
fine.
that there were times, I do remember there were times in there, I can't remember a specific right off the rip.
That's okay. They've had a chance to listen to it. Why is a person's willingness to correct you as a law enforcement officer important?
If they're willing to correct you, then, they're actually expounding upon what I'm saying. They're giving more detail, they're eliciting more detail to the things that I would not or could not, may not know. So when they expound upon that and or correct me, it shows that, to me, they're listening to what I'm saying. They're not just taking it at face value. They're saying, no, that part's not right. This is the way it really was. Again, I wasn't there. I didn't see it. They're correcting me and telling me this is exactly what really happened.
Opposing counsel has been marked as State's Exhibits 183, 184, 215, and 216. First listed marked as State's Exhibit 184 and ask if you recognize that item.
I do.
And how do you recognize that item?
This is an item of evidence I collected from Bo Dukes' buckle swab kit on June the 16th, 2016.
Okay. And I can't remember if I asked you this, but how do you collect a buckle swab?
There's some paperwork that, obviously, you open up the buckle swab kit. It's a sealed kit. Once that's opened, I'll fill out their specific paperwork, their identifiers, name, social security number, date of birth. They can sign it. I'll sign that this is who this person is. There are 2 long Q-tip swabs inside of the kit. I will have had put gloves on. They were either in the kit or other gloves I brought. And I will have the person open their mouth, and I will generally swab each side. There's 2 Q-tips, one on each side, for about 10 seconds on each side, and I'll generally count out loud 1 through 10 on each side. Then I will reseal that package, place the piece of evidence tape that came with the kit, place that back over there. I will sign one edge and have the other person sign the other edge, just documenting that it was sealed in their presence. Seal that package up completely, even do the same thing again on the outer package with the seal, and then seal it up, similar to what I did here.
Okay.
And then document the case number, the barcode, which is our internal barcode number that we identify that piece of evidence because it's a digital system.
Yes, sir.
I'll put the date collected, who collected it, who it's from, and what's in there.
Okay. This particular item, State's Exhibit 184, you've identified that these were the buckle swabs of Bo Dukes. Did you seal this as you've just described?
I did.
And after you sealed it, would it be obvious if it had been opened again?
Yes.
And in fact, does it appear that this item has been opened since the time that you sealed it?
Yes.
Other than the fact that it appeared, can you tell us how you can tell that it's been opened since the time you, don't display it to them, but just describe what you can tell.
Sure. The seal at the bottom of these.
We'll stipulate to this to move us along. We're not.
Well, if they're going to stipulate, then that's great.
They can be admitted.
184 is admitted without objection. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, same questions, 183. Do you recognize 183?
I do.
And how?
We have no objection to any of this.
All right.
Okay,
We
so
will stipulate to the admissibility of these.
All right.
fantastic. I don't have to lay a foundation. 183. But what is it? So the jury knows what we're talking about.
This is the buccal swab DNA kit collected from Ryan Alexander Duke on February the 22nd, 2017.
Okay. After you collected that, was it submitted to the crime line?
Yes, I took it to the crime
All right,
line.
that's admitted 183 without objection. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Judge. 216. Do you recognize that?
I do.
And how do you recognize that?
This is a copy of the search warrant for the DNA for Ryan Alexander Duke.
Okay. And is that a true and accurate copy of that search warrant?
It is.
Your Honor, this time I would tender into evidence State's Exhibit 216.
Any objection? No objection. That's admitted without objection.
And then last, oh, I'm sorry, Judge, I didn't mean to speak over you. And then lastly, State's Exhibit 215. In this particular case, was the defendant fingerprinted?
Yes.
And can you tell us if those fingerprints and I guess palm prints were later submitted to the GBI?
They were.
Okay. And can you tell me if these appear to be the fingerprints and palm prints that were submitted to the GBI crime lab in this case?
They appear to be a set of fingerprints, yes.
Okay.
I understand there's no objection
We
to
don't have any objection.
215.
Okay, fantastic then. Okay, so 215 is in as well. Perfect.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you. Now, while we're talking about the swabs, let me ask you this. You were in law enforcement in 2005, you said?
I was.
Had you ever heard of touch DNA in 2005 as a law enforcement officer?
No.
As a law enforcement officer or in any other capacity, when did you first become aware that the crime lab could get DNA from what we refer to as touch DNA?
Probably 2008, 2009.
Okay.
After I arrived at the GBI office. Period.
Now, I want to change directions a little bit now and discuss with you what happens after February 22nd. At the time that when you and Ryan were out there, were people already digging?
Yes.
The location of where that original dig was happening, I don't want to discuss any specific details, but were any human bones found at that location?
No.
After that time, did you have a chance to speak with and interview Randy Hudson?
I did.
And I know we've talked earlier about that interview with Randy Hudson. As a result of that interview, did Randy Hudson direct you or other agents to a location that he believed was where Bo Dukes had been or had a bonfire back in 2005 in the Pine Grove?
Yes.
Were you present when he did that?
Yes.
And were you present when what we're going to refer to as the second dig took place?
Yes.
Could you estimate for us how far Randy Hudson got from that second dig location?
I don't know what you mean.
Was that second dig location where Randy, the exact location of where Randy took you, or was it some distance away?
No, it was pretty close right there.
Okay. And when you say pretty close, was it like a mile away? Was it 10 feet away? Was it 20 feet away? Any idea?
Within the size of the jury box. There was if I can expand, there was actually a deer stand that was right in front of that location, which is something that stood out to him. That made that, I guess, stand out more to him as far as a refreshing of his memory.
Who was the him that you're referencing?
Mr. Hudson, Randy Hudson.
And are you familiar with that area that we've been discussing, the orchard and then also the Pine Grove, or what used to be a Pine Grove?
As far as the times that I've been out there, yes.
Okay. And did you, in fact, sometime in 2017, take aerial pictures of that Pine Grove area?
I did.
While they're looking for my picture for me, let me ask you, did the defendant ever talk to you about having been in the military?
Yes.
And how did he tell you he was separated or left the military?
It's in the video that we just watched. We all heard it already. We're just repeating it. It's already been stated. You can't just continue to repeat things that have already been stated.
Judge, again, I'm asking him from his personal memory, and actually there's a purpose because we're going to talk about when that occurred in relation to the crime.
All right, I overrule that objection.
How did he indicate to you that he was discharged or separated from the military?
He was discharged from the military after going AWOL.
After what?
Going AWOL?
Okay. And did he indicate to you any reasons that contributed to him going AWOL?
He did.
And what were those reasons?
He talked about an incident that had happened with a fellow soldier where they had gotten hurt or killed during training, and he mentioned something about not being able to kill.
Okay. Did he ever talk to you about prior relationships?
He talked about a relationship he had with Lindsay Ross McMahon.
And did he indicate to you whether or not that relationship affected whether he went AWOL?
He talked about the relationship. I can't say for sure that he said for a fact that that was the sole reason.
Okay.
I think we said it might have been a contributing factor.
And when we talk about the relationship, was it the relationship itself or the relationship ending that would have been contributing to that?
The ending of the relationship.
And do you know, based on what he told you, when he actually went AWOL and was released from the military?
He didn't give the exact dates. I know he said that he had done about, sometime in the brig, like 30 days or something like that in the brig, and then was discharged. I know his discharge was at the end of August of 2005, which is, I think on his paper was the 30th or 31st of August. So just looking at that time and based on that, he would have been AWOL, July, maybe beginning of August time frame.
And that's July, August of what year?
2005.
And how long would that have been before the murder of Tara Grinstead?
The discharge was end of August. She was discovered missing October the 24th.
Okay. I've just handed you State's Exhibit 171. Are you familiar with that?
I am.
And do you see the location of where the second dig that occurred out there is on this particular exhibit?
I do.
Can you mark that with an X, please?
General location?
General location, obviously. Okay. And then are you familiar with the location of where Ryan Duke told you he originally dumped Tara Grinstead's body?
About from the interview?
From the interview, what he told you and what he pointed out to you when you were there?
Generally, yes.
Okay. Can you mark that with circle it for me, that general location? Okay. Would the location, let me display it for the jury. Based on having been out there and what the defendant described to you, would the location of this circle be visible from the road? Let me ask this more specifically. The main highway.
No, you couldn't see that from the main highway.
Okay. What about from the road that y'all are talking about that you traveled down to get to the dig site?
Could you see the where the circle was?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Would her body, however, have been visible from that road?
No.
And why is that?
The growth that I see here, it would have been impossible.
Okay. And also, again, speaking to Ryan Duke, is that also consistent with what he told you about where he dumped her originally?
Right. Well, the original dumping that he described is in the pecan orchard here. I thought you were talking about where we were looking at during the video.
Oh, no,
So the circle is the area where we were looking at the video. Okay, sorry.
So, no, it's okay. I'm sure I described that poorly. So if you can then just put, let's say, a star where he originally dumped her body.
Generally right there.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I apologize, I described that poorly. Okay, so now let's look at State's Exhibit 171 again and explain to the jury what this star represents.
That's the original location that general area location where he said he dumped her body when right after he had killed her. He took her body to the orchard, and that's the general area where he dumped her body the first time.
Would this body have been visible from the road that was taken to get back to the pine woods?
No.
Okay. And then again, what does the circle represent?
The circle is the area that when you look at the video where we were generally looking around in that video, that's that first area.
And then what does the X represent?
The X is the area where we went with Randy Hudson, where we actually located remains.
Okay. Now, obviously from a bird's eye view, this can look different. Can you tell the jury approximately how far this circle is from this X?
A couple hundred yards, maybe. 100 to 200 yards.
I'm sorry?
100 to 200 yards, maybe.
Thank you. As the lead agent in this case, were you familiar with whether or not there were prints recovered from the glove?
Yes.
Were you familiar with whether or not there were prints recovered from the inside of Tara Grinstead's residence?
Yes.
And were you familiar with whether or not there were prints recovered from the inside of her vehicle?
Yes.
As the lead agent, once the defendant confessed, did you ask that the defendant's prints be compared to those prints we've just been discussing?
Yes.
Were anyone else's prints compared to those things?
Bo Dukes.
Right. And at any point, did you communicate with someone on behalf of Mr. Duke about whether or not anyone else should be tested?
Yes.
And were they given the opportunity to give you names about who else those prints should be compared to?
Yes.
Were you ever given those names?
I was not.
Okay. In this particular case, did you ever become aware of whether the glove was re-swabbed by the crime lab after 2005?
It was.
And did you ever become aware as to whether or not that swab with the new technology identified a minute third DNA?
Yes.
At the time that the defendant was arrested, had the crime lab been able to come up with what we call a profile for that third minute DNA?
No.
Following the defendant's arrest on this case, was there ever a time in which you and Ms. Merchant and other persons were present at the crime lab?
Yes.
And was there ever a request made?
Judge, this is all leading. This is just,
Was there ever a request made? It is a specific question, but it is not leading.
the last question was leading, this question is leading, this whole line is leading.
I will rule that object.
Was there ever a request made for additional testing to be done to identify the source of that third DNA?
No. Well, no, yes, there was.
Okay.
Yes, on that DNA, yes.
On that DNA, the
Yes,
third DNA.
yes, yes.
And who made that request?
Believe maybe Miss Merchant. I think she's the one that we were all at the crime lab when that happened. I think it was her request.
Okay. And understanding that you are not the DNA person, to your knowledge, was further testing ever done after Ms. Merchant's request
On
that third DNA profile?
I don't think there was any other DNA tests. No.
Okay, so you're not familiar with whether that was done or not?
No.
At any point during your time period that you were with Ryan Duke on February 22nd, 2005, did he ever indicate to you that he was scared of Bo Dukes?
No.
And the person we've been discussing who confessed to the murder of Tara Grinstead, is he in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am, he is.
Could you identify him for the jurors, please?
Sure. He's sitting at the table on the far end, blue suit, blue tie, with the blue lighter colored stripes.
Thank you, Judge. Let the record reflect, please. He's identified the defendant. I don't have any further questions.
All right, let's take a recess, ladies and gentlemen, for about 10 minutes. You can adjourn to the jury room or line up to put out some fresh air. Does anybody remain in place while the jury repositions? we'll be in recess about 10 minutes.
Thanks for the air.
Yeah. Thank you. Ms. Hart, I understand you have a witness available to present this afternoon if we finish this book, okay?
Yes, Your Honor, sorry. And actually, that witness is one, his son's graduating from UGA tomorrow, so he's the one that we've shifted around to do today. But I don't think we'll have any problems with getting him up today as far as timing.
Okay. Who is that?
Todd Crosby.
Thank you. All right. You ready?
Okay.
All right. Ask the jury to join us, please. All right, Ms. Merchant, you're up.
Thank you, Judge.
Agent Chabelle, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Ms. Hart asked you at the end of your examination if I asked you to do more tests with the GBI. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did I also ask you to investigate in 2019 some issues related to Bo Dukes?
Yes. It was at the end of 2018.
At the end of 2018, beginning of 2019?
Yes.
Okay. And you said you needed supervisor approval to do that?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever get that?
No, because I left the Perry office in 2019 to go to the Eastman office and help them over there.
Okay. To your knowledge, has that ever been done?
Has what?
The follow-up that I requested?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. I also asked when I was at the GBI for your office to test the comforter and the bed sheets, correct?
You did?
Okay. And I wanted to see if there was any DNA or semen or blood or anything like that on those sheets, correct?
You did ask it, yes.
And I asked if you could test it against Ryan, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And you did find blood and semen on the bed sheets, but none of that matched Ryan, correct?
As far as I know.
And the state asked you about Ryan's purse. One of the last things that they were talking about, the state said specifically, I wrote it down, Ryan told you he took her purse to the dumpster. They asked you that, and they showed you their exhibit 204, which was a photo, this photo right here. Do you recall that line of questioning?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when Ms. Hart said that Ryan told you that he took the purse to the dumpster, that's not actually what Ryan said. You said you didn't take the purse and keys and put them in the dumpster out behind and he said, I may have, correct?
Correct, he did say I may have, yes.
So he never actually said he did that, correct?
He did. He did during his interview. He said, I asked him the question, did you put her purse and keys in the dumpster? And he acknowledged yes. And then as we're going back out there again, I asked him the same question, adding what you had just said, and then that's when I said that, yes.
When he said may have?
Yes.
You testified on direct that you told Ryan the day before you went out to interview him that this was an old case you wanted to talk to him about?
Yes, ma'am.
And you also had Bo contact Ryan to corroborate, is what you said?
Correct, that night.
Okay. And you don't know what they discussed, though. You only know what the Facebook messages that Bo supplied to you were.
Correct.
Okay. So they could have had phone calls, in-person meetings, texts, messenger, anything like that that you're not aware of?
Right. Well, Ryan said he didn't have a cell phone, so I just assumed he didn't use his cell phone to communicate via phone with anybody. I think he said he had a tablet.
He said he had a Kindle.
Yeah, something like that to communicate with. That was his source of communication. He didn't have a computer either.
And you're able to use a Kindle on Wi-Fi to have communication now?
Yes.
So you don't know what type of communication Bo and Ryan might have had that night?
Other than what I was provided, no.
Okay. You said you didn't expect him to start off saying that he did this. Normally you'd have to talk for a while.
Yes.
Okay. But he was ready to talk right from the get-go.
Appears like it, yes.
All right. It was almost like someone had talked to him before he came in there.
I couldn't. That'd be speculation.
But you do know that someone talked to him because you directed Bo to actually talk to him.
Correct.
And you were texting with Bo throughout this conversation?
We texted the night before. I can't remember if we just texted or we called, but we did communicate with each other the night before when he sent me those text messages.
Okay. And you were communicating with him on the day of this actual interview as well?
Yes. I don't think I was the one communicating with. Another agent was communicating with him and with his attorney that day because I was doing the interview with Ryan.
Okay. So while you were interviewing Ryan, Bo was feeding the GBI collectively information.
I don't know. I mean, I know he was talking to him. There was an interview, a recorded conversation. However, they were not communicating with me at that time. Like I said, I was interviewing with Ryan.
Okay. And you had organized a meeting prior, and this was a while ago. I believe it was June. You organized a meeting that included Bo Dukes, Mr. Rigby, Paul Bowden, who was the DA at the time, the elected DA before Mr. Johnson, correct?
Not in June. They were on February the 19th.
Okay. So you coordinated that meeting though, right?
I did.
Okay. And you chose specifically not to be a part of the meeting where all the attorneys were present?
Correct.
You didn't want to come in here and have to say what was said during that meeting?
I did not want to display any sort of, I guess, bias during what could have been or may have been discussed during that to influence any decisions I made in the investigation.
Okay. You didn't want to hear what was said during that meeting?
No.
And the meeting was not recorded?
Not to my knowledge, it was not.
And at the time, Bo had an attorney that his family provided for him, though.
I'm not sure if his family was the one provided for him, but yes, he did have an attorney.
And when Ryan came in to talk with you, he did not have an attorney?
He did not.
After the meeting that you set up with the district attorney, you interviewed Bo?
I spoke to him briefly. It wasn't an interview. We did speak briefly. We didn't have, it was a Sunday when that meeting took place. Many of our agents and other folks were not available we didn't have the resources in place to do what we really needed to do. We thought based on that, so the collective agreement was to just get the basic facts that we needed to proceed with the follow-up interviews that we scheduled on the 21st with the subsequent interviews with Ryan on the 22nd.
So during that pre-meeting
Yes.
with all of the attorneys, you became aware that Mr. Bowden, the DA at the time, had a prior relationship with Mr. Duke's family, the Hudsons.
I did not know that.
You did not at the time?
I still didn't know that.
To that, when it comes to the case, I think it's a complete misstatement of the evidence.
Judge, it doesn't call for
Well,
it.
once she has a good faith basis for asking on the cross, I think she can do it. So I'm on over with that, Judge.
As to the hearsay as well, Judge?
I didn't
Because
ask.
he testified he wasn't in the, okay.
Before you went in the room that you were not present for, was there an indication that that Bo knew Mr. Bowden?
I was not aware of that, no. Or any relationship.
Have you since become aware of that?
Not until you just told me.
Okay. Ryan said during his interview, a lot of times he said things like, I don't remember, I'm not sure, things like that. You remember him saying
Yes.
that? Okay. But the point of the interview, you were trying to get him to corroborate certain facts?
Correct, yes.
What he was telling you, though, just didn't seem to make sense to you, though.
Some things made sense, some things did not make sense.
Okay. Is that
And
why
I
you
tried to clarify that during the interview.
And that's why, clarified, you continued to ask him questions about the things that didn't make sense to you?
Correct.
Okay. You didn't believe that Ryan woke up in the middle of the night, drunk, after being passed out, decided that he wanted to drive to a whole other town to rob someone to get a fix, though?
And I'm going to object. What this officer believed or did not believe is not relevant and would not be proper to be in front of the jury.
Well,
I will rule that a difference.
thank you.
Can you restate it? I'm sorry.
Yes, of course. So what Ryan was telling you was that he passed out from being drunk, woke up in the middle of the night, and boom, decided he's going to drive to an adjoining town to rob someone at random, to get a fix. That didn't make sense, did it?
It's what he said happened. That's what
I know
for me
that's what he said.
for me to say anything else, I think would call for me to speculate as to the truthfulness of his statement. I mean, that's what he said he did, and I took him at his word for that.
And I'm definitely not asking you to speculate or comment on the truthfulness of his statement or what you believe. But what I'm asking you is if that makes sense to you. You're an investigator. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Does it make sense to you that a junkie who's looking for a fix would drive 20 minutes away to try and rob someone?
It would not surprise me 1 second for any person who's addicted to substances to drive any amount of distance.
Okay. And when someone who's addicted to substances is looking for a fix, they usually try to get that fix pretty quickly, though, correct?
They're looking for a fix, yes.
Okay. And Ryan told you he did not buy drugs that
He
night?
said that he didn't think he went and bought any drugs that night.
So every time that Ryan would not answer the question or corroborate, we'll use that word, corroborate the facts that you were presenting, you changed topics. Is there a reason that you did that?
I mean, we're going through an interview. I'm not going to just keep on pounding the same moment over and over again. We can move on, and then as the interview goes on, you can see that we actually go back multiple times during the course of the interview and then revisit separate things just to see as he's thinking about them, is a new recollection, is it something new he's thinking of?
Okay. And one of the things that you all talked about was him breaking in. I'm going to put up on the screen what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 76. You didn't think that this lock was picked with a credit card, did you?
I was referring, if I was thinking of a lock being picked, I would be thinking of the one
That one?
where the keys are located.
Okay, so this lock is the one that you thought was picked by a credit card.
Correct.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, some of those photographs are ones I never took.
Right. This
So-
is one that was in the GBI case file. So as the case agent, we can assume that this was part of your file ultimately, though, right?
Correct.
Okay. So based on that, if Agent Rothwell, he was involved in the case as well, correct?
Yes, he was the supervisor of the office at the time the case was at its inception.
So if he told us that he had access to certain information, that would be something you have access to as well?
Most of the time, yes. Early on we didn't. A lot of that information was not shared amongst the agents in the office. It was very, very hush-hush in the office unless you were actually working on the case.
Okay. If he had information and testified that Tara was known for always locking her door, would that be some information that you would have?
Possibly.
Okay. And if she was known for always locking her door, would that change your opinion on whether or not this lock, well, you said this lock couldn't have been picked with a credit card though, right?
From what I see, it looks like one of those ones that slide across.
Or a hotel lock? Is that?
I can't tell you exactly what kind of lock it is, but
May I approach, Judge?
Sure.
It's not a great picture, 2005, but does that appear to be a hotel lock is what I'd call it. Hinge lock, safety lock.
that's what I'm appearing it to be, is like a sliding lock.
Right. One that you lock from the inside.
Yes.
Okay. You have to lock it from the inside. You can't lock out from the outside.
Correct.
Okay. And so for that one to be open, it also either has to be opened from the inside or the door hinge has to actually be taken off.
Correct.
Okay.
And it would also assume that was the lock that was actually locking the door. That would call for me to speculate that that's the lock she actually used to lock the door versus just the bottom lock.
Well, if Dr. Rothwell told us that the evidence was that this is a lock that she always used, is that something that you would rely on?
If he told me that, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I object. I missed what she said. That is a total mischaracterization of his testimony.
It's incumbent on the jury to recall the testimony that's been given. So with that instruction, I'll sustain that objection to the last question.
And there's no evidence in your case file that there was ever any forced entry on this lock, though, correct?
Not that I was provided with, no.
As part of the investigation, you knew that GBI had also interviewed Ms. Grinstead's best friend. Her name's Maria Hewlett. Were you aware of that?
I've seen the name in the case file, yes.
Okay, and she was specifically asked to make an inventory of what might be missing from Ms. Grinstead's house.
I believe so.
Have you had a chance to review that?
No,
Have you ever reviewed that?
I don't think so. I would have relied upon the information other agents would have provided about the lack of items missing from a residence, minus the purse and keys.
Okay, so if they included in there that Ms. Hewlett had indicated that there was a brand new...
Objection, hearsay.
Judge, it's not hearsay. She's available for cross-examination. She's on the witness list, and we are calling her.
This is about what was contained in the file? The
Yes.
GBI's file, is that what you-
Yes, Judge.
All right, here comes.
Judge, whether or not it's contained in his file, it is still hearsay. And as far as she's available for cross-examination, this is not a confrontation clause issue. This is a hearsay issue. It's something that was made by someone who is not testifying, and he's not even one that heard it from her. And so we're talking about double hearsay, and there is no hearsay exception on point.
I understand your previous testimony, Agent Chevelle, was you have not reviewed anything like this in the file that you're being asked of now.
Not this information, no, sir.
I sustain that.
So you have not reviewed anything about any inventory of things that might have been missing from Ms. Grinstead's house?
No, I was told. Again, this is the word of mouth from other agents throughout the course of the time. S.A. Leitner probably would have been the one to talk to me about that, as she was the case agent that left before I got it.
Okay, so when Ms. Hart has asked you about a purse being missing, that's not something you personally observed, though, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's something that was told to you by someone else in the investigation?
Correct.
Just like what I'm asking you about?
Yes.
Okay. So in the case file, is there information about what was missing from the house outside of the purse?
Missing from the house outside of the purse. Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, you don't remember there being anything else missing?
I don't remember there being anything else missing besides her purse and keys.
Okay. And
Or was told.
What you were told?
Or was told. I wasn't made aware or told.
All right, and you don't remember, just to be clear, you don't remember looking at a report from Maria Hewlett?
No. I mean, you can look through the case file, like in the GymNet, you can see that that person's been interviewed over the course of the time. I've heard that name. However, I never interviewed her. I never reviewed any interview summary that she did.
Okay. But you know that she was Tara's best friend?
I'm aware that she was Tara's friend, yes.
Okay. And she's the one that sort of inventoried the house for the GB, or for the local law enforcement at the time?
If that's what the file would indicate, then...
Okay. You charged my client with burglary, though, and you didn't look to see what was missing from the house?
He stole purse and keys.
Okay.
He entered the house. He entered the house without permission with the intent to commit a theft therein. That's burglary.
So you don't think that it's important to look at an inventory of what else might have been missing from the house before you charge someone with burglary?
I mean, again, he admitted that he took the purse and the keys from her house. That's burglary.
And that's
Anything else would be just added to that.
So it's not important to you?
It would be important.
Overruled by objection. You want to restate?
That's what yes. So is that something, when you're charging a theft type case, would it be important to you to review what was missing from the house?
Right, if it was strictly a burglary and that's all that I was working, obviously, if we were looking for property outside, like at pawn shops or other things, you know, having a full inventory of items that could potentially be missing from the house, so we could locate those items to charge that person with the burglary itself, yes, that would be important. Okay.
So things like jewelry, we've seen hundreds of photos of Ms. Grinstead's house, and there's a ton of jewelry around. Would that be something that was important if it was missing?
I would think so, yes.
Okay. So you said you're familiar with the work of Mr. Rothwell or Dr. Rothwell. If he told us that there was evidence that Ms. Grinstead's car was not home during the day on Sunday, would that be something that's important to your investigation?
That it was not home on Sunday?
Yes, that it was not there on Sunday.
I would think that, yeah, the moving of her car would be something significant.
Would it be significant if there were witnesses that specifically said that they saw her car there at home on Sunday? Neighbors?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question, if you can rephrase.
So whether or not Tara's car was home on Sunday is important?
Yes.
Because you charged Ryan with the homicide Sunday morning.
Correct.
So if the car was gone on Sunday day, that would be relevant?
Correct. Whether he or somebody else moved it would have obviously been a relevant issue.
Okay. So the information from witnesses in the case file that said that Ms. Grinstead's car was gone all day Sunday, was that something that you found important?
I don't know until recently that I actually knew. Again, passing along information from agent to agent, I don't recall that the car was moved. I think there was maybe a couple witnesses that months and months later, after the initial, had made some statements about the car maybe being moved at that day, but there were others that said they saw it there that day, so it was a collaboration of both.
Okay. So you don't know if the car was there or not that day?
Correct. Other than supposition from other people who said that, you know, from interviews they had done, other agents that had told me that information, yes.
So, and we've heard that this case file is sort of transferred between a lot of different folks. The initial case agent, though, is Mr. Turner, is that right?
Correct, Dominic Turner.
Okay. And is he with the GBI any longer?
He is not.
Do you know what he's doing now?
The last I heard, he was selling cars.
Okay. And so he's the one that was the initial on scene. So things like Maria Hewlett, documenting inventory, whether the car was there, all those initial interviews, that was his responsibility, though, right?
It would have been one of his responsibilities. That, I mean, there would have, more than likely, I know there was more agents involved than just him
Right.
just Dominic. There was other agents in the area assigned to work leads and interviews throughout the course of that time. Yes, ma'am.
But he was essentially you in 2005. What you were on this investigation, a case agent.
Correct.
Okay. So anything that happened in 2005, when this was fresh, any investigation, was his primary responsibility to document?
Yes.
Okay. So if there were items...
Well, it wouldn't have been his primary responsibility to document it. He would have been like the holder of that information. So as information came in, he would reassign new leads for other agents to follow out, unless there might have been a supervisor on scene. I think Gary had come down at one, Dr. Roth would come down at one point, and he may have been directing those leads, handle this. But that it would have been like a wolf pack mentality, so
Right.
they would have all come in and divvied out those leads and followed them out.
Okay, but he would sort of been like the manager. Okay.
Supposed
Is
to
that
be.
Sort of, okay. So if information like Miss Grinstead's car is not there on Sunday came about during those first few months, that was something that he would be responsible for documenting in the file.
He would have assigned another agent to handle that interview, yes.
Make sure that it was documented, though.
Correct.
Okay. And that's something you would have available when you were investigating the case.
Correct. If I was the case agent initially like that and those things were going on, that would have been information I would have been privy to versus being told later.
When you took the case over, did you go back and review some of the leads early on and some of the stories early on?
A couple of them I did.
Okay.
Not very many.
Okay. Speaking just about Tara's car, there was evidence that it had been driven by someone else. The seat was all the way back. And there was testimony in the file. I haven't even finished it, Judge.
Go ahead and finish your question.
Thank you. There was evidence that Tara's car had been driven by someone who was taller, though, correct?
It was rumored that there was, yes.
Okay. And her seat was found all the way back, and there was evidence that she did not drive that way.
I can't say for sure about that.
Okay. There was also evidence that she always locked her car, but it was found unlocked that day.
Again, the fact I'm not aware of.
So that's not something, you didn't review that in the file?
I don't think so, no.
So that wouldn't have been important to you whether her car was unlocked or locked?
No, because I wouldn't have known which way she kept it normally or how, or it wouldn't have mattered.
So if that information then, how she kept it normally, was in the file, would that then make it important?
Potentially, yes.
So if you had in the file that she always kept her car locked and was meticulous about it, and then you also had information that on this particular occasion the car was found unlocked, would that be important?
It could be, yes.
Would it also be important that there was cash found in the car when it was unlocked outside of the house?
Yeah, I do believe there was cash in the car. I think it was in the center console.
Okay. Would that be important when you're investigating a burglary or a robbery?
Potentially. I mean, it's...
And we heard a lot about the glove. You know who Heath Dykes is, though, right?
I do.
Okay. So he's a trained law enforcement officer, and he was dating Tara at the time.
Yes.
Okay. And so he was interviewed by law enforcement and told them that he went at midnight and specifically did not see the glove.
I don't know about what time, but I know that he had gone by the residence, yes.
Okay. And you know that he had called her also, so there's phone records that he called her around midnight.
I know there was phone calls, yes.
Okay. And he called her and actually heard the answering machine pick up while he was outside.
I'm not aware of that fact.
If that fact is in the record, if the jury has heard that fact, would that indicate to you that it was around that time?
Sure.
Okay, so if the jury has heard that there were calls made when he was literally standing outside her house around midnight, would you have any reason to dispute that he was at her home around midnight?
No.
Okay, and that would be midnight Sunday night, early Monday morning, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you thought that your investigation and what Ryan told you was that everything that happened with him at Miss Grinstead's home happened early morning on Sunday. So either late
Correct.
Saturday night or early Sunday morning.
Correct.
Okay. So if we have evidence from a sworn law enforcement officer that that glove was not seen at midnight on Monday, is that important to you?
If we have sworn testimony that that glove was not there when he was at the house, would that be important?
Yes.
I mean, that's his recollection of what he saw. I'm not
Okay.
going to speculate whether it was important or not, but it's definitely something you would note.
The glove's important to you, though, right?
It is.
Okay. So if the glove is important to you, is it not important when that glove appeared?
Yes.
Okay, so if you think that, what we've heard all day is that everything Ryan did, he did in the early morning hours of Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? If that glove did not appear until Monday morning, is that not important?
Well, you're saying it didn't appear. You're not saying it wasn't there. You're just saying that nobody noticed it there.
Well, I'll
And
ask you
so,
about that. It's more than Mr. Dykes.
That would be up to him to say how he could have walked up to the house. Did he have a flashlight? What was the lighting like outside? Could he have walked up to this door? Could he have walked up to that door? Was he looking for that? All of those factors, I think, would take place as to his recollection of what he saw. I don't think that. Obviously, the glove being there is important, but it's when it's discovered is discovered. I can't speculate as to when they may or may not have noticed it there. Just because he didn't notice it there doesn't mean it wasn't there.
If he told us, he would have noticed it.
That's on him. Yes.
Okay. So if showing him the photo of Miss Grinstead's home, where I think there was testimony maybe 5 feet in front of her front door, and he told us that he would have seen that. He walked around her house, he checked all her doors and checked all her locks to make sure that they were secure.
And I'm going to object at this point. One, it's a compound question, but two, she's asking him to comment on someone else's testimony.
I'm asking him what's important as the lead case investigator in this case. If a fact is important to his investigation, that's his job.
She's asking him if someone testifying in court of something he didn't hear would have been important to an investigation that was already concluded.
It's in his case file, Judge.
Not
Overrule that objection.
Thank you, Judge. Let me start over. So if this jury heard testimony from Mr. Dykes that he went to Ms. Grinstead's house and thoroughly looked around the house because he was checking for foul play because he wanted to know what happened to her.
Okay.
And saw a photo of her home and the position of the glove and testified that he didn't see that glove there and it was not there Sunday at midnight. Would that be important to you?
Yeah.
If there was another witness named Jared Luke, who is the assistant principal at the local high school, if he also told you that he was at Tara's house on Sunday afternoon and knocked on her door and walked around the house to find a dog bowl and that glove was not there, would that have been important to you?
Yes.
So when you asked Ryan about the glove, though, he said he didn't actually use it. He said he never wore it.
He said both, actually. In one side, he said, I'm not sure I actually wore it. And then as he's talking about it, he's saying, well, when I had them on, so he indicates that at some point he actually had them on. And then I even questioned, well, there's things there, evidence that's there, you would have had them on. So he confirms it.
Right, he never says it. He confirmed what you told him.
Both.
If Agent Rothwell told us that the comforter had blood that was consistent with other items in the house indicating menstrual blood, would that be something that was important to you? Is the comforter important to you?
The fact that there was blood on it would be important, to be something we would check and test.
Okay.
Anything that would be, any kind of evidence inside of the residence that would be there that shouldn't be there would be important.
Okay. So outside of this, though, was there any other blood found in the house?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
No blood on the floor?
No.
No blood on any furniture?
No.
No blood on any rugs?
No.
No blood on any clothes?
No.
Okay. And all of these photos that are part of the case file, the GBI case file, you have access to all those photos, though, right?
Yes, I can go and access them.
And you're not aware of any photos showing that there's blood, outside of this comforter, any photos showing that there was blood found in Ms. Grinstead's home?
No.
So are you telling us that you think that Ryan hit her once inside that home, inside that bedroom, and there was no blood in that house?
And you can hear me during my testimony, I asked him, I said, are you the Incredible Hulk? Striking somebody very hard. And then I went and asked him, is there a possibility that it was something else, like choking? And he said at first, I'm not sure, I don't know. And then I said, is it possible? And he said, yes, it's possible.
But he definitively always said no to that. He actually always said no. And if you need to refresh your recollection, I've got the transcript. You're welcome to.
He did say, I said, is it possible? And he agreed. And then I said, okay, and then we moved on.
Right, when you said, is it possible? It's possible. I don't remember. Actually, let me find the exact quote. Well, I've got that somewhere else. We'll circle back to that for a second. I just want to move along. So the question, though, what I was trying to get at or trying to ask you was that you think that one hit in the bedroom killed Miss Grinstead without any blood.
Could have. You've got to be alive to bleed, so if you strike somebody and kills them, they're not going to bleed.
Okay. Ryan told you in his interview that he was stealing her purse from the kitchen. Do you remember that?
He said he was stealing a person. Yes.
Okay. The state has been presenting that this happened in the bedroom. Is there anything to you to indicate that it happened in the bedroom?
It's actually not true at all. It's commenting on our, I guess, it's commenting on a theme or it's commenting on our theory, which has never been propounded. It's not part of the evidence in the case. Complete misstatement.
Would you like to hear?
I can rephrase the question if that's easier.
I'm not familiar with anything that you mentioned in the record, so please rephrase.
Thank you. Ryan never told you he hit her in the bedroom, though?
No.
He told you he ran out as soon as it happened?
He did.
Okay. But he stopped to lock the door?
He never said that.
Okay.
I asked him if he had to unlock the door when he came back, and he says, I don't think I had to.
Okay. He said he didn't actually remember taking her purse, though?
Not initially, no.
Okay. He didn't remember where he parked at the house?
Nope.
He didn't remember how far he walked, but you told him that he probably couldn't have walked very far?
Right, because he was carrying her body out of the house.
And he didn't remember the glove initially, though, right?
No.
He said he didn't think he wore them. That was his first response.
Yes.
Okay. He said he wrapped her in a blanket or a quilt.
Correct, that he brought from his house.
That he brought from his house. GBI trace evidence expert Mr. Peterson has told this jury that it is highly unlikely fibers found on the glove are similar to a quilt or clothing. Would that be relevant to you?
Depends.
I'm going to object again. That is a total mischaracterization.
It's an exact quote.
That is actually not an exact quote. He said that quilt and clothing lead two different types of things.
That was my next question. Thank you, Judge. So if the fibers on the glove were not, and I can break it down and ask it three different ways. So Mr. Peterson said that the fibers for quilts and clothing are different. Okay? All right. So if the fibers found on the glove were neither quilts or clothing,
Okay.
is that important to you?
Potentially.
Thank you.
I mean, you'd have to know at what point did he actually have the gloves on, carrying the body, putting the body inside of a quilt and then taking the gloves off to wrap it up, and you'd have to speculate as to exactly how his timeline of events as he's, to say better words, taking care of the crime scene, cleaning up the crime scene would be. You'd have to speculate as to the order of events that took place, I would think, to understand those fibers being there or not being there.
Okay. You mentioned cleaning up the crime scene. In the case file, are you aware that the crime scene detective specifically said there was no evidence of any cleanup?
Yes.
Okay. I got your training records, and I know that you went to a course on interviews and interrogations. Do you remember that?
I did.
Okay. And that was by the Georgia Public Safety Training Center? Is that?
I did.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a couple questions about that. I have your training materials, but for some reason you need them.
Sure.
In that training, they teach you about something called a pure version statement, where you're supposed to ask a person to provide a written statement prior to any interview. Are you familiar with that?
I'll be honest with you. When it comes to, it's been a very long time. I mean, I couldn't identify any one specific topic from that class. I can tell you that now.
Are you familiar? Or do you remember something called the pure version statement?
No.
Okay. Do you remember being trained that it's important to have a person write down their statement before any influence is given to them, before any questions are asked?
I'm not aware of that.
And you didn't have Ryan write his statement out at the beginning. You talked to him for 20-so minutes before you had him write it out.
Right.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever, in my entire history as an agent or law enforcement officer, had somebody write out a statement prior to the interview.
Okay.
It was always an interview and then the writing of a statement.
Do you have to take refresher courses on that when you interview people?
No.
Okay. So if you forget something that's in your training materials, is that just something that you never have to be retrained on?
Again, I've never been to a refresher class. I couldn't remember every single nuance of every single training minute for, again, I've had close to 4,000 hours of extra training time throughout the course. It would be impossible to remember every single aspect of every single class you've ever taken. I mean, that would be like me asking you, what was the first lesson you learned in law school? You know, the first day, what was the first class? You know, those very specific things, and it would be very difficult to remember exact specifics. Usually when you go to a class, it's a general theme of, at least from my perspective, it's a general theme of, you know, you gather one or two major concepts maybe from that class that bolster what you already do. A lot of things you may already be doing in the line of work. So, yeah.
This is the class that taught you how to interview suspects.
It's one of them.
Okay. And this is the class that teaches people how to make sure that they're not improperly influencing an interview.
Could be, yes.
Okay. So if one of the things that they teach you is that in taking a written statement, it's important to do it before you've influenced the statement. Would that be something important to know as an agent?
No.
Okay. So is there a lot of training that you're given that's not important for your job?
There's plenty of training that's important.
You're also, part of this training is talking about why people lie. And one of the things that you're taught is people lie for their own personal safety. Do you recall that type of training?
I wouldn't need a training to know that people lie to protect themselves.
Okay. And the other thing that you're trained on is that sometimes people lie for the safety of their loved ones.
They can, yes.
Okay. And so when you first started interviewing Ryan, well, let's back up. The day you went out to talk to him in his house, he was very concerned about his family. That was one of the things that you talked about, and that's why you reset the interview up for the next day, right?
Correct.
Okay. So he indicated a great deal of concern for his family at that time.
That's what he said.
Okay. And you pushed the interview then, you reset it till the next day.
Right. I talked to his mother and said he'd like to come down, he'd like to have an interview. Would
Okay.
you mind bringing him down? We created distance with that. Would tomorrow be okay? And we set a time.
So, and they lived in a trailer, correct?
I think it was.
Okay. If someone had told him that trailers burn easily or burn fast, would that be something that might affect him?
I guess it would call for me to speculate as to what he thought.
Okay. One of the other things that your training talks to you about is what's an acceptable admission of guilt. Do you remember that part of your training?
Not that wording, no.
Okay. Well, I'll read it to you then and see if that if
I'm not going to object to her reading from that document until I've had a chance to see it.
It's the training that was provided in this document.
I would still like to see it before it's shown to the officer. I have the codes. And again, I guess let me say, I'm going to object to her reading it, period. If she wants to ask me a question using that, that's fine. But I object to her reading a document to the jury that's not been tendered in evidence.
Judge, I'm reading a statement out of his training to see if he agrees with it.
Well, let's tender.
His whole training?
Whatever you're going to read in front of this jury, we need to have in the record. Yes, ma'am.
I'm happy to tender his training documents.
This whole thing?
If you want me to.
Well, I don't know what page of this that you're looking at, that you're trying to read. So if you can tell me what page it is, then we can.
I don't know the page number. Let me see. It's under the section about a confession being more than just an I did it. It's and I can question him about his training materials, Judge. That's all I'm doing.
I want you to do it like you want to, but if it's going to be read to the jury, it needs to be in the record.
I'm not. It's just like if there was an expert report and I was reading a sentence and asking the expert if they agree. I'm asking him if he agrees with something that he was trained on.
She literally said, let me read it to you.
Let me read you the statement from the training because he doesn't remember it and see if he agrees with it.
Go ahead and do that.
Okay,
and
thank
then
you.
We'll make that document part of the record.
Thank you, Judge. Were you trained that a confession of I did it is not an acceptable form of admission of guilt? Just I did it.
Just I did it?
Mm-hmm.
I would think that I've heard that that you want to corroborate just I did it,
Great. And one of the ways you do that is with open-ended questions.
potentially, or the gathering of physical evidence.
Okay. And open-ended questions are something like, can you tell me what the house looked like?
Correct. You want them to elaborate on the question versus, same thing we do with children's interviews. You ask them open-ended questions. so as not to lead them.
Great, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about the concept of guilty knowledge, because there's been a lot of talk about that. Is guilty knowledge a method that involves you trying to find out if a person has knowledge of a crime?
Correct.
Okay. And does it not account for when a person committing the crime tells someone else about that knowledge?
I don't know. You have to read
So like
it.
if you have two people and one of them committed a crime and another one didn't, and the one that committed it tells the innocent party the guilty knowledge, how do you account for that?
You'd have to try to further corroborate it with other things, statements, testimony, evidence.
Okay, so if a buddy, if a friend told another friend the guilty knowledge,
Okay.
you would then have to corroborate that more?
You try to,
Okay.
if as best you can, or again, when you have somebody that says they did it.
Okay,
You know, I mean, that to me, that's corroboration. They're not saying that somebody else told me that I did it. They're saying I did it.
right. What if they later say that someone else told me I did it?
Well, then that's a different story from what they told me.
Okay. How are you trained to deal with an innocent party who has guilty knowledge?
That would depend on. I cannot answer that one question with just one statement.
Okay. Well, I know you said that you'd need to corroborate it. So is it fair to say you'd need more corroboration if that was the situation?
If it was possible, as an investigator and working investigation, you want to corroborate as much as possible that you can.
Okay.
Given with what you have, in layman's terms, it's not what you want; it's what you got.
Great. So if a person with guilty knowledge verbally spread that information to other parties, would that affect how important this guilty knowledge is?
Well, then it would no longer be considered guilty knowledge, I would say, because for me, guilty knowledge is what that person knows because they did it. They were participants in it. Once that knowledge gets spread out amongst the community, it's no longer guilty knowledge.
Okay.
Because everybody knows about it. That's why we keep it in-house, so as to keep it as guilty knowledge.
And you said the glove was on a TV special before your interview with Ryan.
Okay.
And the fact that the glove was had Miss Grinstead's DNA on it, that was also in a TV special.
I believe it was not the early onset specials. I think later on, as time went by, I think it eventually was released.
Okay. So it's possible Bo could have told Ryan about the guilty knowledge.
Objection, speculation.
I asked if it's possible.
Overrule that objection.
Is it possible that Bo could have told Ryan about the guilty knowledge?
It's possible.
You've testified in prior hearings that guilty things are things that you're trying to see if they're going to tell us without us actually telling them. Do you agree with that?
That would be one of the methods, yes.
Okay, so you don't want to tell the person you're interviewing, you don't want to tell them about the guilty knowledge before
Not
they
the
say
specifics of it, absolutely not.
it. Okay.
The idea would be for them to tell you.
Right, exactly. So if you tell them first and then they respond, that makes guilty knowledge lose its effect. Is that fair to say?
If you tell them
Okay.
the exact guilty knowledge and they then spew it back to you, it's no longer, you've told them. Kind of like, when you mentioned earlier about knowing something, and I said, well, you just now told me.
Right, gotcha. Okay, well let's jump over to that then. Let's talk about the guilty knowledge and who said what first, essentially. In your interview with Ryan, first I want to talk to you ask you some questions about this being at Miss Grinstead's home, okay?
Okay.
So you asked throughout the interview several times about this happening at her house. So that's what I want to ask you about, okay? The first time that you asked her, you were the first one to mention that it was at her home. Do you recall that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's not something that Ryan first volunteered. That's something you volunteered first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry. Yes.
So you asked Ryan what night he went to Miss Grinstead's home.
Correct.
And at that point, he had not said he went to her home.
Not at that point, no.
You then asked him again. You went to her house. He still hadn't told you he went to her house.
Not at that point yet, no.
Okay. And then about 20 seconds later, you asked a third time, how did you get into her house? He still hadn't told you he went to her house.
He said he used a credit card because I asked him I take it back, he went in the very first 5 minutes of the interview, I asked him, how did you get in the house? And he says, I used a credit card. It was very easy. I used a credit card.
I'm glad you mentioned that. He actually did not say he used a credit card. You said he used a credit card. He never mentioned a credit card first.
He said, it's very easy. I used a card. I think he said a card, maybe a credit card. I asked him how he got in the house. That was one of the qualifier questions that I asked him at that first onset. How did he get into the house? And he said it was pretty easy. I picked the lock. And I think I said with a card. So yes, I introduced the card.
Would it help you to refresh your recollection if you read a transcript of
Sure.
proceedings? Okay. Judge, I'm going to show, and for opposing counsel, we gave this to the state yesterday. It's the transcript with the timestamps.
Just a minute, just a moment, what portion of that thing you're
I can give you the exact timestamps. This is at 3:02. His question is at 2:58, and Ryan's answer is at 3:02. May I approach?
Not yet.
Okay.
Get everybody on the same page.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, I don't object to that being shown. It appears to be consistent.
Good, thank you.
Thanks. It's just, let me know if, when you're done.
You want me to read the whole page?
That page and the next page, the beginning of the next page, just to see if it refreshes your recollection on whether or not Ryan told you that he used a credit card.
Okay, you're correct.
Okay. So you asked him first at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and I'll leave that up there for now.
Sure.
At 2 minutes and 30 seconds, you first asked him about it. You asked again at 2 minutes and 58 seconds, and it wasn't until 7 minutes and 20 seconds in that you told Ryan, you said you used a credit card to break into the house.
7 minutes?
7:19, yes, sir.
Okay. He said, oh, can I read it?
Read it to yourself and see if it refreshes your recollection.
Okay. Okay.
So you first introduced the credit card.
Right. I said you used a credit card to break in the house. He said, yes, sir.
Okay. So at that point, Ryan had never said he used a credit card.
Correct.
Did you ever ask him if he had a credit card at the time?
I did at some point ask him, does he still have the credit card? And he says, no.
Did you ask him if he had a credit card at the time?
No.
Did you ever run a credit check to see if he actually had a credit card at the time?
No.
Did you ever run anything to see if his brother had a credit card or anyone that he would have access to had a credit card?
No.
I want to ask you some questions about the one-hit statement. About 7.5 minutes in, you told Ryan, you punched her, you hit her, and he responded, I don't know, that's one thing. I can't remember exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. You asked him again, could it be something other than a punch? But he continued to tell you no, that it wasn't anything other than a punch, correct?
Correct. Several times.
And you continued to ask him several times if it was possible it was something else, if it was possible, and he continued to say no.
Correct.
Okay. And that's when you said the comment you mentioned earlier about you're not the Incredible Hulk. Did you say that because hitting her one time didn't seem to make sense to you?
Correct.
You asked him about the location of the house about 9 minutes into your interview, and he didn't know which house you were talking about or whose house it was.
Correct. He said that.
Okay. He didn't know where
Yeah, I did.
He adopted your statement at that
And then,
point.
he confirmed what I said, and then he added the 411, and then he added the store. I never said the store, and I never said how the phone call was made. He volunteered that information all by himself, which again corroborated what I already knew to be fact.
Right. And we'll get to that in a minute. So after he adopted your statement, though, that's when he said, I called hoping she was okay.
That's what he said.
But he got the time of the call wrong, though. He told you that it was pre-dawn when he made that call.
He said early morning hours.
And he said specifically it was pre-dawn, though.
Early morning hours.
And the call was actually at 9:30, which is several hours after dawn.
Correct.
So he got some of those facts wrong. So let's talk about the glove. You initially told Ryan at about 13 minutes in, tell me about the gloves. I know there were some gloves. At that point, Ryan had never mentioned the glove, correct?
Correct.
You told him there were gloves.
Correct.
He agreed they were his.
Yes.
He told you he never put them on.
Correct. He said he wasn't sure, and then I don't think I put them on.
You asked him what color they were. Do you remember that?
I did.
And he told you they were clear.
Or translucent.
Exactly. Clear or translucent. Not cream, opaque. Correct?
Okay.
He told you they were clear.
He did not
translucent?
say cream or opaque, no.
He said they were clear and translucent.
Correct.
I know that we talked a little bit about him, whether he was there to get drugs. You asked him if he stopped for drugs, and he said no.
Correct.
You asked him if he heard any animals while he was at Miss Grinstead's house.
I did.
He said no.
Yeah, he said, I know, I don't believe I heard any, no.
But you know from the investigation that Dolly, her dog, barked all the time and was outside.
Correct. Which is why I asked him about that animal to begin with.
And he said no.
Correct.
He also told you he had a job at the time, right?
Yes.
And that he worked very long shifts,
Yes.
and he had a place to live,
Yes.
but he didn't have a credit card. As far as you know.
As far as I know.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that question.
Did not have a credit card as far as he knew. In this interview, you primarily used what we would call leading questions, correct?
Confirmatory leading, yes.
Okay. Confirmatory are ones that sort of suggest the answer, is that right?
Right, I'm asking the question, and do they confirm it or do they tell me something different?
Okay. And you're aware that sometimes people confess to things they didn't do,
Sometimes they do, yes.
and that's for a variety of reasons.
I would say yes.
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the actual interview and his health. Let's see. So when you started the interview with Ryan, you knew that he had health issues.
Yes, based on from other people, they said that he had some drug and alcohol.
Okay. And depression and mental health issues?
Not sure about the depression and mental health issues, but I knew about the alcohol stuff.
Okay. You knew he was disabled at the time?
No.
You knew he got disability? You talked about it in your interview.
I don't remember talking about it. I'm not saying I didn't, but I don't remember talking about disabilities.
Okay. And he told you early on in the interview, that he was tired. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's how he felt.
Less than 2 minutes in, he said, I'm tired.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, let's take a break. 2 minutes in.
Where are you referring?
First page.
Okay.
So you took a break less than 2 minutes into the interview?
No.
How long were you into the interview at that point?
2 minutes into the interview.
Okay. You offered to take a break 2 minutes in.
I asked him to get him some water.
Okay.
Want some water? You want to take a break for a second? Get some water? He said no.
Right. And that you said that in response to him saying, I'm tired.
Correct.
Okay.
That's not my version of what I believe his tired to be is not I'm sleepy tired. My version is I'm tired of, if you look at what he had just talked about, he was tired of, I believe him to be tired of what was going on.
Right.
Not
right.
necessarily the interview itself.
Definitely. So let's talk about the recording then. When you first got, what time did you guys meet at the office that day?
What time did I get to the Ocilla Police Department?
What time was your interview with him set up?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock, okay. And the timestamps on your interview, it shows, I think that they're probably off. Do you know how far off they are? Since the interview starts at 12:51, I believe.
Yeah, he got there early.
Okay. So when did he get there?
I would say probably around 12:45-ish.
Okay.
It wasn't very long. I mean, it really was not long. I didn't have I wasn't staring at my watch and looking exactly the time. It was about 12:45. I was in the back, was told that he had arrived. Had a couple more, Agent Holland was with us. We were finishing some conversation, getting ready to start the interview.
Okay. So at the beginning of the interview, though, you didn't record it, right? The very beginning?
Right. We didn't start the recording until he stepped into the interview room.
Okay. So you talked to him a little bit about what was going on before you started the recording?
No.
You didn't talk at all before you started the recording?
We exchanged pleasantries. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you coming. We're going to step back here to the interview room. There was no discussion, talk about this case in any way whatsoever until we sat down and you heard me say so yesterday when I came out.
And I didn't indicate that there was any talk about the case. I certainly wasn't trying to indicate that. There was discussion, though. Not about the case, but there was discussion before the recording started.
There was exchanging of pleasantries. Again, thank you for coming. I appreciate you coming down. His parents were there. I said, we probably won't be very long. Appreciate you bringing him down. Thank you for coming down. And then we walked back to the interview room.
Okay. So less than 2 minutes in, though, you offered to take a break. You hadn't been at it very long at that point. Why would you offer to take a break?
Because of his answer.
Because he was tired?
No, because of his answer of, he literally said, I'm involved with it, man.
He says, I'm tired. My whole family is good people. I don't want to do this to them. And you said, okay, let's take a break. You want something to drink?
Right, that's after he had already made that whole first, tell me what happened.
Right. My question is, though, less than 2 minutes into the interview, you're already offering to take a break because he's tired.
I'm offering to give him some water, yeah. Break
Okay.
for water.
Okay.
I offered him water. He said no.
The video, you didn't turn the video on until about 22 minutes in?
Correct.
Okay. Is it normal that you would only do the audio and then decide later on to turn the video on?
If I even turn the video on at all.
Okay. So you knew that, obviously we talked about, you knew he was tired when you started this. You knew he had health problems. You knew that he suffered from some health problems. I know that you all discussed that, correct?
Some alcohol issues, yes.
Some kidney issues and things like that you talked about the day before?
I think we did, yeah. I think he mentioned that because he was also elaborating on his, with his mother and father and having some health issues, yeah.
And they talked about how he was on dialysis and
I don't know about the dialysis part, but he just mentioned some health issues.
Okay.
That's what I recall.
And in your interview, he also told you that he had not slept the night before.
Right. He talked about, getting not as much hours of sleep, yeah.
Okay. When you booked him, and one of the last things we hear on that video we listened to this morning is you told the jail staff that he had some medical issues that needed to be considered. So you
Correct.
thought that was important to tell them?
Yeah, the jail, absolutely. In my experience with having worked in the jail and being around the jail, a lot of times when people are booked in, they don't necessarily talk about their medical history stuff, so just food for thought for them to double check on.
Okay. So you knew, though, that there was some significant medical history that needed to be documented at that point?
Based on his statements, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Or considered.
So at the time that you went out to interview him, the case had been pending for, 12 years at that point?
11 years, 4 months-ish.
Okay. And so at the beginning of the interview, you asked him if he had taken, he told you that he had not taken medication he was prescribed. That he was prescribed, I think he said, a butt pile of pills for issues, but that he had not taken them that day. Do you recall that?
I remember him talking about when he used to take medications, lots of medications, he'd line them up, and we went back and forth about, you take one pill to get over one pill and take another pill to get over that pill. Initially, though, that's not what he said.
So at four and a half minutes in, 4:25, you said, do you take any medications or anything? And he said, I'm supposed to take a butt pile of them, but... Mm-hmm. And then you asked him, did you take any today or in the last couple hours? And he said, yes, I took a pain pill this morning. So
this is while we're reading the Miranda.
I'm sorry, yes.
This is while we're reading the Miranda. Yes.
At the very beginning, within the first 5 minutes of the interview.
Right
4.5
about
minutes.
the 5-6 minute mark.
First 6 minutes of the interview. So he tells you that he has not taken a pile of pills he's supposed to take, but that he did take a pain pill.
I asked him, I said, are you under the influence of any alcohol or drugs? He said, I took a pain pill this morning. And then I asked him about the pain pill.
Okay. You actually said, did you take any medications? And he said, I'm supposed to take a pile of pills, but he didn't.
Right. Said he took a pain pill.
Then you asked if he took anything in the last couple hours, and he said he took a pain pill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's talk about this. Two separate things. Did you ask him if not taking medication he was prescribed affected him in any way?
No.
Okay. Did you ask him what medication he was supposed to take that he had not taken?
No.
Did you ask him what the medication was for that he had not taken?
No.
When he said that he took a pain pill, did you ask him what pain pill he took?
No.
Did you ask him when he took it?
No.
Did you ask him any information that might be helpful to determine the effect that pain pill might have on him?
I did ask him. I asked him if it, hampered his ability to, make decisions, and he said that his mind was clear, his free mind was clear, something to that effect.
Okay. And I know you testified on direct that you had an opportunity to work in the field, and I'm assuming you've done DUIs and things like that, and drug and alcohol type of investigations. Have you ever had a suspect that told you they were not under the influence of something, but they were?
Yes.
Since this investigation had been pending for almost 12 years, was there any reason that you couldn't reschedule this to a time that he had not taken a pain pill and he had taken his prescribed medication?
I didn't feel there was a need for it, no.
But there was no reason not to reschedule it at this point. It had been almost 12 years.
He was there. We were talking. I felt like that was the time to talk.
Okay. But the day before you went out and scheduled it for the next day, so is there any reason you couldn't schedule it for the next day after that?
There's no reason I couldn't. I wanted to do the interview, and he was there. We did the interview. I felt like it was a prudent time to do the interview.
Okay. So no reason that you couldn't reschedule it for a time when he actually had taken what he was prescribed?
No.
And no reason you couldn't reschedule it for a time that he hadn't taken a pain pill?
No.
He mentioned when you talked about searching his house that he had a roach in this house. Is that a term for marijuana?
It is.
So he had burnt roaches in his ashtray. Did you ask him about if he was under the influence of marijuana at the time?
I asked him if he was under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Marijuana being a drug.
You actually never asked him if he was under the influence of alcohol or drugs. You asked, did you take any medications or anything? Do you take any medications or anything?
I asked him, are you under the influence of any alcohol or drugs? That's my recollection of it. As I'm reading Miranda, it's not even written on the Miranda form. I specifically asked him, are you under the influence of any alcohol or drugs?
So during a different section of the interview?
At the very beginning of the interview. At 12:57, 12:58 p.m. as I'm reading Miranda, that's one of the questions I'm asking as I'm going through his name, his address information, years of high school, he added the college year, can you read and write and understand English language, are you under the influence of alcohol or drugs? He said, I took a pain pill. Okay, is that a pain pill you took every day? Yes. Does it affect your ability to make any decisions? You understand what's going on? Yes, I'm not a sound-minded body, but he acknowledged that he understood what was going on and what he was there to be talking about.
So, actually at 4 minutes in, 4 minutes and 25 seconds in, you actually said, did you take any medications or anything? He answered it different than what the video said, and I don't want to have to play the video, but
I will move that.
thank you. So at 4:25, you asked, did you take any medications or anything? And this is not during Miranda, correct?
The only time I ever asked him about taking medications was that I remember during the interview was when I read a Miranda. At the inception of Miranda, I asked him, are you under the influence of any alcohol or drugs?
So you don't remember asking him, do you take any medications or anything? You don't remember that?
I'm not saying that I never have. I don't remember saying that in that particular order. I remember saying, are you under the influence of any alcohol or drugs?
Do you remember him saying, I'm supposed to take a butt pile of them?
At some point during the interview, absolutely.
Okay. And then do you remember saying, did you take any today or in the last couple hours?
Right, he said I took the pain pill.
Okay, and that was not when you read Miranda. This is an entirely different time. This was about 4 minutes in. Is that correct?
That's when I was reading Miranda. I started the interview at 12:52. I started Miranda at 12:57.
Your timestamps of the 12:52, I'm trying to equate them to where we are in our timestamps because we have different ones.
Clearly.
Yes. So mine is, my timestamps start at the very beginning, okay?
Please take a look at what you gave him and
It's the same.
see if y'all can.
It's the
get
exact
together.
same.
I don't know that y'all are looking at the same pages, so if you'll please refer him to
Sure, of
that
course.
page. Thank you.
And I'm not objecting to him looking at it. I would ask it be used to refresh his recollection only and not testify from it, which is, I think, what's about to happen.
Well, don't. Take it, Chanel, don't read from it.
Yes, sir.
Read it to yourself, and if you can answer the questions posed, please do so.
Why don't we read the first 3 pages up until 4 minutes and 38 seconds. If you could go ahead and read that.
Okay.
To yourself.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good stretch time, John.
Okay.
Great, thank you. So this is before you read him Miranda, correct?
No, this is while I'm reading the Miranda. There's no statements about any kind of medications other than drinking and that I was a drug addict prior to Miranda.
So your Miranda starts around 4:44 though. When you say, I'm going to read this to you, okay, at 4:40. That's when you say, I'm going to read this to you, Miranda.
No, it starts at 3:16 on yours.
On 3:16.
Right,
Can I approach?
Yes.
So this is his first statement here up to this point, and then this is when I say, okay, that's when I say I'm going to pause for a second.
Right.
What you're telling me is important. I want to hear what you have to say. I'm going to read you your rights.
You don't say that. You don't say that.
Jen, I'm going to object. You're just arguing.
At 3:16. At 3:16, do you say, I'm going to read you your rights? At 3:16, and I'm going to read you Miranda.
Excuse me, 3:32.
3:32.
Right.
I want to make you aware of your rights.
Correct.
At this
Yes.
point, we are reading from a document that the jury is not allowed to see.
They have the video, and we can play it, but it's
Then play it or give
Just
them
a lot
a
easier.
I mean, Those are the rules. You want to admit that?
I don't want to admit it because I think that's improper. But I want to question him about it, and so I believe I have the right to question him about the statements that are made.
I agree, but don't read from the document.
Thank you.
It's not admitted.
Thank you. So let's just back up on this for a second. So you're getting a document out. We can't see because there's no video. So we can't see that you're getting a document out about Miranda. But you don't say anything about Miranda at this point.
I'm making him aware of his rights.
Making him aware of his rights. But you don't say anything about Miranda at this point.
I've got the document in front of me. I'm starting to fill the document out.
We can't see that on the video, though, correct?
Okay.
Is that accurate? There's no video.
Correct. There's no video.
Okay. So you're asking him questions about if he takes any medication. And he tells you he's supposed to.
He tells me that he took a pain pill. I asked him, are you under the influence of any alcohol or drugs? And he said, yes, are you under the influence of any alcohol or drugs? And he says, I took a pain pill earlier this morning.
And he did not take the medication he was supposed to take.
I don't recall that ever being said.
Then you ask him how old he is.
Correct.
You say, you're 33 now, 32?
32, 33, something like that. Yeah, I'm filling out the Miranda form as those questions are being asked.
But you ask him, are you 33 now, 32? You weren't sure if he was 33 or 32, right?
32 or 30, yeah.
Okay. And he said 33, I think. Is that correct? So he didn't even remember his age?
It's not unusual.
Do you know someone named Tammy Jergovich, Jergovich, the Deputy Director of the Department of Forensic Division at GBI?
I know the name. I don't know her personally.
Okay. You reached out to her asking her specifically, you believed that Ryan killed Grinstead in the bed, but you needed further testing to put him in the bedroom because he didn't tell you that. Do you recall that?
I don't. Miss.
Judge, I don't object to this being used to attempt to refresh his recollection. That's all it's being used for.
All right,
May I
great.
approach?
Sure, thank you.
Just take a look at
Thank
that entire document and see and let me know when you're done.
Sure. Okay.
Does that refresh your recollection?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Take your time.
Okay.
Does that refresh your recollection?
It doesn't really, honestly. I mean, she's sending an email to somebody else saying something that I'm not saying I never had a conversation with her. I'm saying I don't remember that conversation. But she does put in there specifically something that I would have possibly said. I'm not saying I never said that. I'm not. I'm saying that I just don't recall sending an email or talking to her about it specifically.
Okay. Can you read the bottom and see if that refreshes your recollection, the part with your email address attached?
So may have been in a phone call.
Okay. So do you recall emailing with Miss Jergovich, I believe is her name, and asking her to call you?
Yeah.
Okay. And then do you remember reaching out to her because you believed Ryan killed Miss Grinstead in her bed, but Ryan did not tell you that he killed her in her bed, and you needed further testing to put him in the bedroom?
Correct.
But you never got any further testing to put him in the bedroom, correct?
I don't think there was ever anything that put him in the bedroom, no.
You never interviewed any witnesses about where Ms. Grinstead's car was on Sunday? You personally?
I don't think so, no.
And you can't identify any witnesses by name who saw her car at the house on Sunday?
Correct.
But you know that there are witnesses who said that her car was not there on Sunday?
I'm familiar with, yes, there is, I think, 2.
And none of the prints that were found in Tara's home match Ryan, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And none of the prints from her door match Ryan?
Correct.
None of the prints from her car match Ryan?
Correct.
No DNA matches Ryan from inside the house?
Correct.
You actually never got any evidence at all to put Ryan inside of the house?
None other than his own statement.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. They're all outside of his statement. Okay? So not taking into account his statement, you never got any evidence that put him inside that house?
No.
You never got any evidence to even prove that a crime occurred inside that house?
Correct.
Just, sorry, can we pray for just one moment?
Sure.
Start over.
Sure.
You don't have any physical evidence, any forensic evidence that puts Ryan inside that house?
No.
You don't have any physical evidence that puts Miss Grinstead being killed inside that house?
No. Other than the glove, you'd have to speculate whether she was killed outside the house or inside the house based on the location of the glove.
Okay. So you don't have any evidence that that glove was there on the day that you're alleging Miss Grinstead was killed?
Other than it was located and found and documented by law enforcement on that Monday, no.
The next day?
Right. Yeah, I know that's the day it was located and found, yes.
Okay. So you don't have any evidence that that glove was there the day that you're saying Miss Grinstead was killed?
Other than Mr. Dukes' statement that he brought the gloves to the house and that he left them there. I think that's actually evidence that it was there, because he said that he left it there. He said that he had gloves. I know that there is DNA from him and from her on that glove. I can infer that that glove was there at the time he said he was there. And I can tell you, that it was collected on that Monday. Based on his statement, the fact that the glove was there and was located, even if it was on Monday, you could still infer that the glove was there when he left the house Sunday morning.
Is there any evidence on that glove that indicates Miss Grinstead was killed?
No.
Is there any evidence on that glove to indicate that a crime occurred at all?
Well, she's missing, and I think that's evidence enough that there's a crime.
Is there any evidence on that glove, or in that glove, or surrounding that glove to indicate that she was murdered?
Not murdered, no.
Do you have any forensic evidence at all that she was harmed inside that house?
I do not.
And you're in charge of the GBI file, so if I'm asking you if you have it, I'm asking you if the GBI has it. Is that fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay. So there is not one single piece of forensic evidence or physical evidence to prove that she was harmed in that house?
Other than the glove.
But
And Ryan's testimony.
Again, my question was physical evidence.
Physical evidence. The glove is physical evidence.
And you just testified that the glove is not evidence that she was harmed.
I can't say that the glove itself proves murder. I can just say that the glove is a piece of physical evidence attached to the case based on all of the evidence that we have is a piece of physical evidence that connects that glove to her homicide. So in addition to not having evidence that actually proves that she was harmed inside that house, you don't have any evidence, physical, forensic evidence, that she died in Irwin County? Other than Ryan's testimony, no.
You don't have any physical evidence that she died from a single hit with a hand.
That's impossible. When I say it's impossible to say that because there's no body.
Again, you don't have any physical evidence to prove that she died from one single hit with a hand.
No, I can't say that.
And you never got any evidence that she did not leave her home voluntarily the night she went missing.
Rephrase, I'm sorry.
You don't have any physical evidence, forensic or physical, that she did not leave her home on her own free will voluntarily the night she went missing.
No, I do not.
And you have no physical evidence that Ryan took anything from her home.
No. Other than her body.
You have no physical evidence that Ryan took a body from her home.
The glove.
You have no physical evidence, physical forensic, to corroborate what Ryan told you.
The glove.
You have no physical evidence to corroborate that he burglarized her home and assaulted her while he was in there.
Other than his statement, no.
At the beginning, we talked a little bit about this glove and the profile. So based on my request to have it further tested, you were able to develop a third male profile on this glove?
I'm not sure if it was a male profile, I just know it was another DNA profile.
So there's 3 sets of DNA on that glove.
Correct.
The state asked you if you charged Bo and Ben Hill with concealing the death. Did you also charge him in Wilcox County with lying?
Correct. And concealing death.
I'm sorry?
He was indicted for that and concealing death in Wilcox.
Just one moment, Judge. Sure. Thank you. You spoke with Bo before you spoke with Ryan, right?
Yes.
And the forensic testing of that glove could not exclude Bo Dukes as that third contributor, correct?
Correct.
Sorry, did you follow up?
Yes, I'm going to try to make it. This picture, this is State's Exhibit 76. Prior to today, do you ever recall actually seeing this picture in the case file?
No.
Looking at this picture, can we even tell if there was another piece to this lock that was usable?
You don't see it on the door.
Okay. Ever seen a door where they had one piece of the lock and the other piece missing?
Yes.
Ever been in a public bathroom where one piece of the lock was there and one piece missing?
Yeah.
And have you ever heard any, yourself or, we're so far afield, but any evidence in the case file that anybody has ever said that Tara Grinstead used a lock such as that?
Not that I'm familiar with.
Now, just to be clear, from the time you took over this case in 2009 until 2017 when the defendant was confessed to her murder, was this a murder case or a missing persons case?
Missing persons case?
Until the defendant actually confessed to her murder, did we have actual knowledge she had been murdered?
No.
Defense counsel asked you about whether or not, I think she's indicating that at some point she communicated with you directly to ask that there be testing of the sheets or the bedding or the comforter to see if there was brine, semen, or blood. Is that what I understood the question to be, or is that what you understood it to be?
Correct.
Okay. Do we know whose semen was in fact on her bed sheets?
Yes.
And do we know whose blood was in fact on her bed sheets?
Yes.
Was it Tara Grinstead's blood?
Yes.
Now, sitting here today, I don't know if you know the answer to this, and we're going to hear from the crime lab people tomorrow, but do you know if there was a used sanitary product in her bathroom?
I believe there was.
Do you know whether or not that was hers or some other female's?
I have no idea.
Okay. Do you have any knowledge, either personally or from this case file, as to whether or not in the week leading up to her disappearance, Tara Grinstead was in fact menstruating?
Other than other agents speculating that. I don't have true factual statement on that.
Okay. So when defense counsel asked you if you have any evidence of a crime occurring in her home, sitting here today, are we able to tell whether that blood came from her being struck and bleeding or whether it came from her menstruating?
I don't know that you could tell the difference.
Could it be either of those?
It could.
Now,
It's just her blood.
I'm sorry?
It's just her blood.
And to, I guess, go further, when you interviewed Ryan Duke, do you recall him saying there was no blood when he struck her?
Correct.
Defense counsel asked you a question during her cross-examination about you didn't think it was possible that someone would drive 20 minutes when they're high and drunk because they wanted drugs. Have you ever driven from Osceola to Ben Hill County?
Yes.
And do you know where Ryan Duke and Bo Dukes were living in 2005 when Tara Grinstead was murdered?
I do.
Have you ever been to that location or near that location?
Yes.
Is it 20 minutes away?
Not really.
And in fact, is it less than 10 minutes to get to Fitzgerald from here?
About that.
And I guess I should have asked that. What county were they living in back in 2005?
Ben Hill County.
And in fact, were they living on this side of Ben Hill County?
Yes. Near the hospital.
Near the hospital. Thank you. Defense counsel asked you about whether or not you had information that Miss Grinstead's seat was found pushed back for some, as if someone taller had driven it. Is that right?
She did.
Are you
All leading. Sorry, just leading.
Let's wait till we get to the question part. I think she's entitled to recall his recollections to a certain point of the testimony, so
Thank
let's
you.
wait till we get to the question. Thank you.
He just answered that last question though, and and then she was leading into her next one. I'm objecting to that one that he just answered yes to, and a question is leading if it suggests its own answer. That's what she's doing.
Question
Quickly.
Question before, sustain that there.
Thank you.
I don't know which question we're talking about that was sustained, so can we be clear so I can re-ask it properly?
Can you please read that back from the transcript, not in court reporter?
Defense counsel asked you about whether or not you had information that Ms. Grinstead's seat was found pushed back for as if someone taller had driven it. Is that right? Answer, she did.
And just, I don't want to keep objecting to leading. I don't want to interrupt her. So I would just ask that the leading stop. This is not, she does not have her own thoughts.
Sustain that objection to that last question.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Just suggesting the answer.
Okay.
Is
Do
that
you,
right?
I apologize.
That's all right. Thank
Do you recall?
Listen, it is getting late in the day, but let's be careful with our questions.
Yes,
okay?
sir.
Thank you. Let's don't relax about that.
Do you recall whether defense counsel asked you a question about whether or not there was evidence or speculation that Tara's seat in her car was moved back?
Yes.
Objection leading.
Do you recall, Judge? A specific question is not
I will
leading.
rule that okay.
Thank you. From this case file, do you recall if there were ever incidences in which other people disagreed with that?
Yes.
Do you recall that there were...
Just because it's do you recall is still leading. It's suggesting the answer. That's not a magic fix.
No, it is a... Sorry, Judge.
All right,
The last question was leading.
I overrule your objection to that last question. Go ahead.
Do you recall whether or not there was information that there were people going into her car before law enforcement got there?
Objection leading. Whether or not. That's it.
Overruled that objection.
Do you recall if there was information or evidence that there were people going into her car before law enforcement arrived on October 24th of 2005?
Yes.
Defense counsel asked you about a few interview techniques, and I'm going to be very brief with this, but do you know if there is anything in your manuals or in your training about how you should behave when you're interviewing someone?
They would talk about that, yeah.
Okay. And what is the recommendation about the demeanor that you should express when you're interviewing someone? Do you recall that?
I mean, you're going to be cordial. Try to be as, I guess that's the best way, to be cordial, to be, to develop rapport with the persons whom you're interviewing. obviously you're not trying to anger them or get them to not want to talk to you. You're trying to open the doors to communication to get people to talk to you.
Okay, thank you. Defense counsel asked you, or do you recall defense counsel asking you about whether or not you had leading questions?
Correct.
And what did you describe those leading questions as?
Confirmatory style questions.
Was there ever a time during the interview in which you were using confirmatory questions and Ryan Duke corrected you?
Yes.
Defense counsel, do you recall defense counsel asking you about whether Ryan indicated to you that he was sleepy during this interview?
We'll rule that a check.
Can you repeat? I'm sorry.
Do you recall if the defense counsel asking you questions about whether Ryan Duke told you he was sleepy during the interview?
Correct. She did.
Okay. Do you recall defense counsel asking you a question about whether Ryan told you he did not sleep the night before the interview?
Yes.
Do you recall during the interview if Ryan told you what his sleep habits actually were?
Yes, he did.
And what did he say about whether or not he normally sleeps?
He said he normally didn't sleep more than 3 or 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours. Or he said never slept more than maybe a couple hours. Anything more than 4 would be like heaven or something to that. Would be exorbitant.
Do you recall if at any point you discussed with Ryan that he had at some point had dialysis?
I think so. Yeah, he talked about it.
Based on your recollection of that interview, did you have the impression that that dialysis was still ongoing or had ended?
Had ended.
At any point, did Ryan indicate to you that he was under the influence of anything that would keep him from knowing what was going on? Did he say it from his mouth?
No.
At any point during that interview, did Ryan Duke tell you that he felt too poorly or too sick to speak with you?
No.
And the last thing I want to touch on, do you recall defense counsel indicating to you that you are the first one who introduced the idea that the crime occurred at Tara's home?
Yes, I remember saying that.
I'm going to show you page 2 of interview 1. Don't read this out loud, please. But if you can read from right here, yes, from right there and go down.
Okay.
Now, I think you may have mentioned this before. To be clear, having looked at that, do you recall what Ryan told you about how this crime occurred?
I'm sorry, you got to.
Do you recall what Ryan told you about how this crime occurred?
Talking about breaking into houses?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Were those his words?
Yes.
So, having had a chance to look at that, were you the first person to suggest that this actually occurred at Tara Grinstead's home?
Now that you say it that way, no, he did.
Thank you.
Any follow-up, Ms. Burns?
Yes, thank you. Now, Perch, page 2.
Thank you. Okay.
Can you tell me what line it says that he said this was at Tara's home?
He never said Tara's home. He just said breaking into houses.
He never did say Tara.
No, he said I used to break into people's houses just to steal money.
Perfect, thank you. So I asked you to test a lot of items, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
I pretty much asked you to test everything you possibly could.
At the lab, when we were there at the lab, yes.
And I was Ryan's lawyer at that time, right?
Yes, ma'am, you were.
The state asked you about his lock.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Rothwell confirmed that the hardware for the upper lock was there. Do you have any reason to dispute
Again,
this?
I'm going to object. I do not believe that there was any ever testimony of that. I don't think she has a good faith basis.
I have a good faith basis. He said that exactly. That it was
He
there.
was never
It was in
even
the home.
asked if he knew that. In fact, he said he didn't go in the home that he can recall that day.
The jury's will have to recall what the testimony was. I'm going to allow that question. I suspect we'll hear more about it later.
Thank you, Judge. Do you have any evidence to the contrary?
No.
So in this photo, you can see the hardware though, correct?
Yes, ma'am. There
Okay.
should be door hardware for locks.
Thank you. Nothing else.
All right. That it, Ms. Hart?
For this witness, yes, sir.
All right, Ms. Person, let's please mark that excerpt out of the training manual you were questioning from before we forget. Let me see the lawyers up here for just a minute.